So it is.
Because they
it is a
have to
county.
slow down because it's narrow.
That's right.
Yeah.
The ones that used to speed on that road, those dump trucks bringing that
Yeah,
field to
right.
the
But, and the
landfill.
percentage that we're going
Schedule
after
to
was.
Lester always thought you guys speed, I don't remember somebody used to sit over there, yep, they're not only doing 25, they're set. I used to say Lester,
Okay, shall
bigger the
we,
vehicle.
are we all set to start our meeting?
He's bigger.
Yes? Okay. So I'll call our meeting to order at 6:02. If you are joining us via Zoom, please put yourself on mute and be recognized by one of us here in the room before you speak. Thank you. Okay, we'll jump right in, regular business. Oh, sorry, is there anything to add? Do we need to? No.
Not that I'm aware of.
No public forum?
Sharon has a question.
I've had a handful of people ask me if we're gonna do something about the library, about the cemetery and all the trees. in Greenwood.
Greenwood?
Yeah.
You're talking.
Greenwood
I saw
and Barney.
Oh, okay.
Barney and
4 trees came down.
So maybe under other business, we'll talk about storm recovery, storm damage.
Okay. Thank you,
I
Sharon.
saw Greenwood, I didn't see Brian.
Yeah, I saw something on.
so somebody
Social media.
volunteered their company.
Hmm?
On
All right,
Facebook.
now we'll move into public forum. Sorry. I don't see any public here. We have Jill, who's the department head. No public forum. Okay,
Supposed to be short and sweet.
short and sweet, that's
So to
right.
speak.
So regular business. Brett, now we're ready for you. Do you want to come on up?
Yeah, where do I sit?
Right in the middle,
We
if
can
you'd
make
like.
a space
Yeah.
for you right between Jill and her. Bring it to
You want a
you.
soft chair or a hard
Yeah,
chair?
they're not chair.
Oh, you know,
It's
I
the best place to grill you.
I knew they weren't.
No, all of a sudden I decided, my nose has decided to run.
Ian, do you want to share screen or should I?
Don't get too comfortable.
I can, you're a co-host, Val, if you have the documents pulled up,
Okay.
like, I can grab them too. And I have the one that I worked on today, which will probably be later on in the meeting.
So would you share the operating budget? Do you have that?
Sure.
Okay.
Hang on one sec, give me 2 seconds here.
Well, what is it, 1 or 2?
1.5.
Before we get started, I just want to say I appreciated all your notes, Brett, that were in there.
I was just
Oh,
gonna say that, you
Just a
know.
continuation from each year, and I try to update them accordingly, just to show you what it is.
But it's helpful, though,
Well,
to
yeah.
see that, you know, when we see the numbers, it's really helpful to understand where all that comes from.
As I'm sure you're all well aware now, expenses have gone up across the board, just, the cost of doing business, unfortunately. But in the fire department, I don't want to say unique, because we have a bond payment currently built into our operating budget that decreases each year. If you were to add on other lines, you don't notice it as much. However, as we discussed a year ago, if you recall, it's certainly not my goal to spend the money that we didn't spend the previous year on our bond payment. But in this case, with this year, with operating costs increasing, it certainly helps. And I'm actually in the negative. So it's a good thing.
All right, what do we got? Can everyone read that? Let me do that a little bit bigger. No?
Sorry.
Let's try this then.
Where's your revenue line? Everybody else got a revenue line.
Only place we get revenue is in the form of a donation, which is.
You don't want to.
I'm just
read it,
picking.
I know.
I look okay, Val? You can read that? Okay. All right.
Although you might want to hide the account numbers column because they don't really add anything and just take up space.
Okay.
Sweet.
Do you want me to go through line by line? How do you want to do this? Or
I
do
think you can
just have specific questions for me?
I mean, if you have a discussion that you want to have, just in terms about your budget overall, and then we can take a
I
look
can
and just see.
highlight a few things.
Yeah.
So, for those that aren't aware, whether in the room or
It's easy to see.
listening out in virtual world, so your firefighters are compensated the state's minimum wage for services they provide. And when I say services, that means any emergency incident in which they respond to, and their required training by the Vermont Fire Academy to keep their certifications.
Yeah.
And a couple of in-house items such as firefighters are responsible for, I don't want to say maintaining, but providing some services for the facility on a monthly basis. Like in the winter months, the firefighters are responsible for keeping the sidewalks and the front of the doorways shoveled and salted, etc., taking out the trash, things of that nature. So there is an increase in the state's minimum wage, which is anticipated. So it's up from $13.18 in 2023 to $13.67 in 2024. Not a significant amount, but it is still an increase. So that's where that number comes from. No changes in our annual dues. The membership dues that the town pays for your firefighters at the local level for our regional mutual aid fire association, that's the Addison County Fire Association, our Vermont State Firefighters Association. Let me back up. Should preface that by saying you do get something for those dues. At the county level, the county puts on trainings throughout the year for firefighters to participate in. They pay for instructors to come, which obviously is the cost associated with that. I'll give you an example. Just a month ago at the VFW in Middlebury, they hosted a Vermont Fire Academy training on lithium batteries. Anybody's paying attention, lithium batteries they're out there, they're a good thing, but they're very dangerous when it comes to emergency services. Right. So it's certainly shed a lot of light for me personally. It's one of those calls I am not looking forward to the first time, but I do feel that much more prepared, as I'm sure everyone else, include the gentleman to my right who was in attendance that night. But yeah, it's just a new challenge in the fire service.
For that particular thing, do you need additional equipment to handle if one of those is on fire in a car or in a house, if it's a battery backup for a house?
That's bad news.
Yeah, there are things out on the market. Obviously vendors latch onto this type of stuff, and there's significant price tags associated with it. When it comes to a lithium battery fire, obviously we're talking about something small for, say, an electric bike. We could literally drown it in a 5-gallon bucket of water and leave it. However, when it comes to a car, they're practicing in Europe, I guess, like, let's just say it's a roll-off dumpster filled with water and literally putting the car in the dumpster and drowning it. But we don't carry roll-off dumpsters on our fire trucks, and it's just not really that feasible. And the concern is, if you do have one of these types of fires, it could take 30,000 gallons of water to extinguish it. Well, now you have 30,000 gallons of what? Contaminated water. Where's that water going? Into your storm drains, eventually into the river, et cetera, et cetera. So, believe it or not, best practices today,
Let it burn.
let it burn.
Interesting.
Obviously,
So
we're gonna
battery
protect our...
backups in your house is gonna burn?
Yeah, when I say let it burn, that doesn't mean if it's in someone's garage, we're gonna let it burn. If there's we will protect exposures, other houses, someone's house, but the best practice would be just to let it burn itself out, which is, these are things that these manufacturers need to be thinking about. But that's the reality we're faced with.
There may not be anything to put out if it detonates before we get there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna go home right now, just take this out.
Well, Peter brings up another point. They can become explosive.
Yeah.
There's, if I'm not mistaken, what was the number? 7,000, like your AA type batteries. There's like over 7,000 of those in a vehicle, one vehicle. So, yeah, it's just, again, new world, new challenges for the fire service. So,
Is it gonna warn me before it explodes?
They're gaining all the time.
Okay.
They're sort of,
On safety measures, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, not catching fire.
and there's certainly
But you read
best
about it,
practice
though.
that you do. The fire department of New York has shared lots of information. Actually, since this training we attended, I've developed a draft standard operating guideline on how to mitigate the situations for our firefighters, because New York City was good enough to share nationally what they have done because of lessons learned. Just last year alone, I think they responded to something like 150 of these electric bike fires.
Oh,
Yeah.
And if they're in an apartment on the, say, 50th floor of a
Right.
building, and no warning, and it's not a good scenario. So,
It's kind of
Yep.
like the cell phones, that just
Yeah.
kind of go.
so anyway, I know we're getting off track here, but,
Yes.
Yeah.
so, but that,
Sorry, yeah.
our association fees pay for things like that. In the Vermont State Firefighters Association, similar, they offer some services. One of the things that we here in Bristol, any department takes advantage of in the unfortunate event that a member passes on, there is a death benefit tied to that $16 per firefighter annually, that is paid out to the family.
Okay.
Whoever they designated, so it's not a tremendous amount of money, but it's a few $1,000s that certainly helps with, associated costs
Right.
when someone passes on.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on.
So that's your dues. So training, add a little bit more for that.
Yes, training, as we anticipate sending, there's a lot of great training out there. Much of it is available to us at no cost. However, there are some really great trainings that, in order to stay compliant, get up to speed on current practices, we'll say send 2 firefighters off to a training. We're not gonna spend a lot of money to send 20 people,
Yeah.
and then they'll bring back the knowledge they learned and share it with everyone.
Okay.
So yeah,
These
that's,
instructors are averaging between $3,000 and $5,000 for a 2 to 4 hour course.
Can you start to be instructors then? That sounds like a.
yeah, and all my free time. Yep.
Yeah. There's a revenue line.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a personal revenue.
That's a
But-
personal revenue.
But again, it's $2,000. It is a lot of money, but speaking of training, talking about training, it's
I
not a
don't
lot
look
of
at it as a
money.
lot of money compared to how many firefighters you have in the service.
Exactly,
Right.
so,
that's
but
not a
because
lot.
of our kind of a regional approach to firefighting here in Addison County and the sharing of resources, we're able to keep those costs down.
Yeah.
How'd you get your phone bill to go down?
Well, I have nothing, so the
Right,
phone
right.
bill, that's a good question, Dara. So like phone, electricity, so I look to the town, to Valerie, to Sharon to insert those numbers, phone bill, yeah, all that stuff. I don't have access to it, I just know they take it out of the budget every year.
Yeah.
So, but actually regarding the phone, we eliminated two of our phones we lease at the fire station. So
Okay.
there was a little
Yeah.
cost savings there.
That was it.
I don't think it's a huge cost savings, but there is a cost savings.
Okay.
On your power and Sharon Valve, the first 2021, 22, you were at 8,020 and it's down 2,000 the following year.
Mhm.
Do you know why? Were you guys just more energy efficient? They're shutting lights off, right?
Well, the lights shut off themselves. That's a
Right.
great question. So all the lights in that building are on an 8-minute timer.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing.
Mhm. We're
I'm
not
still trying to get a
complaining, but-
I'm still trying to get a solid answer on, our heat pumps. So half of that building is heated by heat pumps.
Mhm.
And some people you talk to say you should let them run all the time, others, anyway, I'm thrifty, I treat it like it's my own, and I'm constantly turning them off.
Mhm.
So that could be some of the savings there. The building is extremely efficient,
Yeah.
and it gets a lot of natural sunlight because of all the windows,
Mhm.
so it stays warm. Yep.
Okay, do you have enough in your supplies line?
That supplies line, it's been there forever. It's gone up over time, and I have overspent it, as I think it was last year I overspent it.
Well, 2 years ago, you overspent
Yeah,
that too.
that's where it's kind of the catch-all
Catch-all.
for all the little items that, aren't maybe anticipated, or
Mhm.
as an example, Saturday, this high wind weather, the
Mhm.
second high wind weather event we experienced here in town. The firefighters were out for several hours, assisting the town crew, and so, we bought a couple of pizzas. That's where we charge something like that too.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Didn't we have to, 21, 22, didn't you have to take out that 5-year elevator inspection that we didn't plan on?
The 24 grand.
yeah, well, we would have charged that to the
Building
annual
maintenance.
services
Oh,
line.
okay.
Yeah, that's where that would have been a charge too. So yeah, supplies, I feel comfortable with that slight increase there. Electricity, propane, same, we just look at past years. I don't know what propane is gonna do this next year.
Yeah, the limit
Burn.
house.
Burn, right, yeah.
You're always below your 7,000 for the last couple of years at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
Well, you're we're through, what are our dates here?
And those numbers, I bet,
Yeah.
they were
Depends on
just
how much
there.
fuel's in the tank.
They came on, last January 10th. They were there
Oh, okay.
in the afternoon. So the generator had been running for, I don't know how many hours at that point, 12 hours, 14 hours.
And the propane.
To fill it.
oh,
They were there topping it
Yeah.
off.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
so yeah.
Dispatching there?
Yep, dispatching fees, Shelburne Communication Center, they're our primary dispatch center.
That's every year.
Every year, several years ago, their town manager, they finally put a flat rate, with a percentage increase annually, which was very helpful. It used to be you paid per call. It was something like $34 per call every time you were dispatched. So obviously for budgeting purposes, it makes it much easier to have a set rate.
Mhm.
And we also, very small, I think it's $250, we pay annually to utilize the Chipman Hill repeater site in Middlebury. And we had to utilize it on January 10th when our primary site went down here in Bristol, because we do not have backup power at that location. We have to switch over to that site, so we're still able to communicate with our dispatch center. So, but the grant we recently applied for, if we are successful, will assist us.
You are not.
We were not, there we go. I just found out.
That's a shame.
Hot off the press.
So,
No, because you had that, because it would have required a archaeological, whatever it is, because you're
Really?
doing something with a building. Yep,
oh,
But you're in the building.
I know. I asked Eric about it. That's how I know.
it's very unfortunate.
That's weird.
We didn't
Put the generator.
support any generators in that
Put the
round.
generator.
How
in
much
the
was,
building.
how much was it gonna cost you guys
That,
to put the backup power to? I can't
It
remember.
was
what the
about
guy was for.
17,000 for everything.
everything,
Generator in
generator,
the
the
building.
heat supply.
So wait, so if you-
Archaeological.
With the archaeological.
It wasn't a big deal. The archaeological isn't a big deal. It would have sailed right through. But since this was reallocation, everything has to be done by July.
Oh, okay.
And there wasn't,
There wasn't
they
enough
felt there
time.
wasn't enough time to get
Okay.
the survey done. Everything else could be done easily, but to
I
get the
see.
survey done in time to be able to spend the money
Okay.
wasn't gonna happen. So anything that needed that survey didn't get funded.
Well, we'll try again. And we have a grant writer on staff, so maybe she is able to find
Well,
a pot of money that
I
maybe.
don't know if we're talking about capital monies tonight or not, but if we are, we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna revisit this.
Yeah, and
topic.
I see one of your lines has the, moving hopefully away from that at some point, that location.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, I know we at one point were talking about putting a tower here. Has
Right.
that kind of hit a wall, or are you
Well,
guys still
I'll leave it up to
working?
you, Michelle, but if you guys wanna table this until we talk about capital, that would
Okay,
be,
Yeah.
That's fine.
well, we can go through this.
Yep. Mhm.
All right, building maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, these are, planned annual
Yeah.
expenses.
Like you said, everything's just a little more expensive.
Yeah, everything goes up each year, the cost of doing
Yeah,
business.
you haven't gotten your elevator.
I don't
New
think
contract.
anything.
No,
new
a new
about that.
contract was sent to the town. It hasn't been signed yet.
Okay.
That dollar amount is reflected here, but that would be in annual services, I
Yeah.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
The number of visits have gone down, but the price has gone up. So they told us it worked.
It's the building, building maintenance, there's the planned building maintenance, but there's also those unforeseen expenses. Example, so a couple months ago, we were having issues with the radiant heat in the slab of the garage, and we had a bad circulator. And, that was like I think a $1,500 part, then of course it has to be installed. And then we had another expense recently. We actually had a water leak. And it was interesting, the plumber, who was extremely good from Jackman's, it's amazing how he called it. He says, yeah, you got a small leak in your radiant tubing, and it's most likely due to a nail or a screw head that was put in 7 years ago. It nicked the line, and after 6-7 years, what do? They rust, they rot. So what was like a makeshift plug, unintentional of course, is deteriorating, so now it's leaking. But he found it was in the closet in the wall going up to the second floor.
Oh, wow.
So very fortunately, we had to cut a piece of sheetrock out in the closet. But but they found the leak and we didn't have to do any major.
Floor stuff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
'cause
then you had the black mold issue,
Oh,
right?
thank you, yes, the black mold.
So,
So,
Thanks for that reminder, Val.
back to the unplanned expenses.
That's what I'm good for.
But, you know, it's a trade-off too, because, you know, should I have do I have an other line in there in building maintenance? I do.
Last one per thousand.
You know, using the black mold as an example, you know, the insurance ended up covering that. I fought it pretty hard, but, you know, also there was a lot of volunteer labor involved there. You know, your people in your fire department, this guy to my left donated a lot of time mitigating that, you know.
How did that particular thing happen? The black mold.
There was what's that thing on the back of the freezer?
Freezer, the coil.
Coil.
A coil was leaking.
Just
So-
over time.
Yeah, and you know, we had it serviced since, and what we did as a mitigation measure, we had Murphy's Metals built a pan.
Condensation.
So both our refrigerator, they're on wheels.
Right.
The refrigerator and the freezer are in a pan
Yeah.
now.
It's
So
just-
should that happen again, something's gonna catch the water.
Good.
And there's a little alarm in the pan that when the water hits it,
Okay.
the alarm will go off and tell us,
So-
we need to go over and check something.
Great. All righty.
2 o'clock in the morning, get that
Call
little
fire
alarm going
department.
off.
Well, the pan's an inch and a half deep, so it's
Okay.
quite a lot of
That's
water.
great. I like that you've got your
Well,
your snow plow.
Well, I
dampers
reached
prepared.
out to Scenic Valley, who the town currently has a contract with. I don't know how long that goes for, but just asked them the question, you know, based on, it's an annual thing and it's, you know, no fault of the town crew. It happens, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a lot of damage. And, you know, the first plow, I guess we had a month or so ago, you know, obviously the ground wasn't frozen yet, you know, it was a disaster over there. But I repaired that myself, put it back together, and then when they had to plow a week ago, a little bit came up, but it wasn't much.
Any way to mitigate that? Stakes or something?
Don't plow.
We put in snow stakes just to
Yeah.
kind of show the edges and corners, and I'll just leave it at
happens.
that.
It's a
it just
giant blade scraping along the ground.
Yeah, and you know, if the sod gets up above the pavement,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
if they happen to get, you know, they can't leave this, it's like a parking lot, so it has to be pushed
Yeah.
off the pavement,
Yeah.
which means you're on the grass.
Yeah.
But certainly, a lot of the damage was mitigated because we straightened the road.
Right.
So, because there was a lot of the damage annually.
Yeah, curving around.
That's not an issue, so that's a good thing.
And that road has been okay in terms of it's
Yeah.
a little bit closer to the brow of the hill.
It
right
is,
there.
and certainly it no
You can
different
see
than it
around the
was
corner
before.
better than-
Yeah.
It's
not
like
the
never
difference.
fails, you know, right when your brain tells you, all right, I'm gonna turn left now if I'm heading west.
Right.
As soon as you start to turn, doesn't a car come up over that hill? It would never be an issue if folks were doing the speed limit.
Right.
But,
Which they should be. There's a speed sign right at the top of that hill.
but they're not alerted to that until they get around that corner.
That's right.
So, but that speed limit sign has been on.
Anybody
Great
who
thing.
lives here knows where that speed limit
It's
sign
a
is,
great
but they
thing.
just
I really
ignore it.
think it helps.
They don't wanna read the message on the speed limit
Yeah.
sign, so.
Right. Okay.
What else do we have?
Yeah,
Your custodial going into okay, yeah.
Yep, and now those notes where it says move budget line, we did that a year ago.
Yeah. So we
Yeah.
can
So
clean this
you
up.
guys.
Well, we usually keep
decide.
it because
Yep.
it's in
3
there.
years and
Yeah.
then it'll go away.
Yeah, where we kind of combine those things.
Yeah.
But why is the workman's comp up? Did we have some
You'd
issues?
have to ask Valerie or Sharon or
Those numbers.
somebody else.
That
those are
comes from the
numbers I
state
don't
or
insert.
from our
Right.
VLCT, if I
Okay.
recall.
Valerie, do you know why?
VLCT has their own calculations of how they come up with those numbers, and we have issues with some of their numbers from other sections of their allocations, but it's based on experience, perhaps, past injuries, past claims, and then it gets reevaluated over time.
Yeah, and we've certainly had it, a few workman's comp claims over the year, even just recently, it happens, it's a high-risk occupation. But the accident and disability insurance, that is pretty much a set amount. That's Gaines Insurance out in Virgins. So that's our accident and disability insurance. Just a little extra protection for our firefighters.
Come the tower cost, the communications tower went down.
Well, Peter, that's a great question. I'm not gonna say it went down, as Sharon will attest to, communicating with this national company is next to impossible. We were told, we have a lease with them, we know what the annual cost is, they tell us what the percentage increase is gonna be every year, and we build that in the budget, but as the numbers show, we're not necessarily hitting it, so I backed it off.
Okay.
Um,
So it didn't go down, it just, we were over budgeting,
Yes.
over budgeting.
appeared to, but who knows, next year we could
We
be.
could be under.
Right.
Well, but you said they also, there's a certain percentage that goes up each year.
Yeah.
3% every year, so.
And so you pay what they budget, what they send you a bill
Yeah.
for.
We pay monthly, Sharon?
Yes.
Yes, monthly. It's around, I think, $363 is ringing a bell monthly.
What was my up to 4% for later discussion? That was from last year, I guess. I believe that.
Yeah, it was probably tied to the whole tower thing.
Right, okay.
So,
Radios and pagers,
that's level funding.
okay. Is that part of your equipment budget? Or
So,
is that outside?
Well, we had that's radios and page. Can you expand that first column a little bit?
Yeah.
It's in the parentheses there.
Maybe.
I have it right here in front of me.
Come on. Thank you. A little bit more. A little
Okay,
bit
repair and replace. So
there we go.
every firefighter's issued a pager.
Yep.
Those pagers are currently $475 to acquire one. And they do break and have to replace from time to
Yeah.
time. However, we, the town have been successful in years past with Homeland Security grants and getting funding to replace these, but, our pages are starting to date themselves.
Okay.
And we are starting to see more and more issues. So building and replacement, and I do, just because of donations, I have built into my capital plan the acquisition of some additional
Okay,
portable radios, because in a perfect world, every single person in that fire department would be issued a portable radio. However, the cost of it's not feasible.
Yeah.
But due to our success with grants, acquisition of radios through, state surplus auction sales, pretty much every firefighter does have a radio in their hand, but those are very dated. So, but the fire service radio, one that you would want your firefighters to have that were going into a fire, smoke, heat filled environment, they're extremely expensive.
Yeah.
They're over $4,000 for a portable, one handheld radio. Yes. So I have a couple of those each year, and then purchase a few pagers to keep those going. We're actually, we just took delivery of them. Eric hasn't given them out yet, but we're actually trying to go in a different direction regarding brand. We're moving away from Motorola.
but it looks like there is no actual for this past year, but you did buy them? We just haven't.
Well, a lot of the fire department's planned purchases, as we go down and we get to like personal protective equipment, we wait until the end of the year, the end of the budget year, to make those purchases. Just because, if we are in a difficult situation,
You can adjust or
we
whatever.
could, maybe hold off on something. That's why. Yep.
Is that bond payment,
I
Is it
think that
non-
needs to be corrected. I just looked into the capital budget information and, let's see, where,
Well, we always budget a number and it always seems to be less than what we budget.
call the bank?
well, it does decrease over time.
No, it's not.
Well, I gave her the information for the primary payment. The interest, they will not give you. It just depends on what's going on, when they charge us interest in February.
Okay,
So is it more than likely, Valerie, that number will go up?
Yep, there it is.
Where'd you pull that number from, Valerie?
From the capital improvement plan. I have the amortization schedule.
So no one's called the bank and asked?
Yes, I called the
Yeah.
bank and I sent out an email saying what the primary payment would be
Mhm.
in August. They won't give us the, interest payment that's due in February.
Okay, so that, you're saying the number that Val just put in,
I have no idea what,
oh, okay,
I don't remember what the number was. I'd have to look at
It
the.
Well,
was-
how could last year be 110,432 and this year be 121?
It's two different payments. Principal and interest get billed separately.
Yeah, one's in February, one's in August.
But still, why would the payment go up? I mean, if
Yeah.
we're paying down on a bond.
It's actually going down, because
Well,
last
not-
year's,
Well, not
Not
if we paid
according to you.
110.
Oh, hold on.
no, that's not a complete. That's only through November.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's the actual, okay, gotcha,
Right,
gotcha.
right.
So it is going down, it's going
It's
down.
going down, yeah. You can
But
see from
what's-
the prior years, it goes down a little bit every year.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but our 22, 23 actual is 117.
I wouldn't trust that right now.
Let's just put some question marks in there.
Yeah, it's probably in the same category as the 110.
Okay,
Something didn't get logged.
all right.
And again, that's another one of those numbers I look to the
Right.
staff
Yeah.
here to insert those. And the number that was there, that 110 was the number Sharon you had provided me with. So, but it obviously did not reflect, I
Okay.
guess, an interest payment.
Yeah, the 110,
Oh, there goes my budget.
431.
There goes that $20,000.
What we paid in August of last year was the 110, 431, and we haven't made the February payment for this same fiscal year.
Okay.
Well, when we get to the capital budget discussion, I can show you where that number comes from.
Okay.
Fire prevention education, the cost of the things we purchase annually through the National Fire Protection Association, that, you know, like the handouts we do at the elementary schools.
Yeah.
As you can see, we've overspent each year, so I needed to bump that up $100. So I did that. Yeah. Uniforms, I dropped that, instead of 3, dropped it to two uniforms this year, and that's just based on the numbers of people we have and a few other miscellaneous things. I was able to drop that 500. The personal protective equipment, that's one of those items that went up significantly. I wanna say it was like 10%. The cost of a set of firefighter protective equipment, their turnout gear they wear. But because we've done a good job at rotating gear out, I was able to eliminate the purchase of, instead of 3 sets, which we have been getting annually, we're down to 2. But, you know, there are other items that need to be replaced, some boots, some helmets. So little decrease there.
When did you change the fire uniforms from 2,500 to 2,000? Because the one I'm looking at still says 2,500.
Which one's this, Michelle?
Your uniforms and apparel. You said you dropped it by 500.
Oh, I was still talking about PPE, the personal protective equipment.
No, but I was talking about the one above that. You said you dropped it by
Didn't I?
500, which you did there, but
You
the
budgeted
one I'm
last year.
looking at that was online still says 2,500. So I didn't know
Oh,
if that happened
wait,
after.
because I did it like an hour ago.
Oh, okay.
I was going through these numbers again. I'm like, here's another place I can save. So, yeah, literally I did it like I love these live budget sheets.
Yeah.
So for that reason right there. So, yeah, that's my bad.
No, that's fine. I always
You're
like to
looking, you're looking at old data.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm looking
An
at
hour
what
ago.
was online
Brett's,
for me.
Brett's
so
working
I
on his
recognize
budget
it.
down to the line here. It's good.
Apparatus vehicle maintenance, we dropped that $5,000 over a year ago.
Yeah.
Now today, our budget, that line in our operating budget, our 23-24 operating budget, shows we've spent,
27.
yeah. And has something to do with the insurance checks, and not reflecting the
reimbursements.
yeah, because
Uh,
we received all the monies, you know, it was like a $35,000 insurance claim on Bristol's, on our engine 2.
Yeah.
And we got it all, but something to do with how the money can't be, I don't know, Sharon, you'd have to explain it, why.
Explain
it's
it,
the way
Sharon.
it is.
2 of the checks came in last fiscal year.
Mhm.
We didn't do the work till this fiscal year. Can move it, but it's not best practices.
Okay.
The 3rd check came in this year, so that one,
So how does that show up will that show up on their budget so that they know it's there, or it doesn't? It shows up as miscellaneous
it was
income?
last year's budget, it came in last year's budget.
No, I mean the one that came in this year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Where
it's
does that
but
show?
it's not a revenue though, so
It's
how
not
does
revenue.
it?
No, it goes through the insurance revenue and then we put it into the account that
Yeah, it came out of.
it came out of.
It'll just
Yes,
credit the apparatus
6,000,
vehicle
yeah, It
maintenance.
was 6,000 something, but the other 2 checks came in last fiscal year.
So,
Because when I ran this by my vehicle technicians who, you know, ones who usually charge to this line, and they were like, yeah, we, literally only spent a few grand this year already.
Right.
So they were a little taken back, but because, I don't know, it was either Sharon or Valerie, somebody provided me a detailed budget report of the expenses to that line. So, it tells me, and would tell all of you, that we're nowhere near spending over that line yet. It's just the whole insurance thing is.
Okay, so,
Right, which is hard for us
Optics
to
is,
look at.
the optics of it is not good. I don't like that.
So Sharon, to your question, you said the check for this year, the rest of the insurance company was like $6,000.
Yeah. they
So
gave 'em more.
should that be 21,000 or 33,000 for that actual? Did we actually spend?
should be
That
21.
6,000 should go back in there, so it should be 21,
yeah,
but it's really even less than that,
So-
except the checks came in
Yeah.
prior.
No,
fiscal year.
this year's check was $6,000.
Right,
Yeah.
In this year's, so have
yeah.
we actually spent
I don't-
21 on?
No, I don't believe that credit isn't part of the 27, so I think you're right, it's gonna go down to 21
Yeah,
something.
the entire bill came, just a few
Right.
months ago, $34,000.
And but you put two of the checks in last year onto the bill or whatever you,
Couldn't. Not-
Yeah, so what,
not best
so
practice.
Sharon, what happens with that money? If you got the checks last fiscal year, where do those funds go?
Into the insurance revenue line?
So then they eventually get back into the fire department line or not?
No, not technically. Chip told me from Nemrick how I could move it to this year. I've moved one, I believe, and I've gotta move the other one. But again, they said it's not really best practices, but we haven't started the audit, so that I can move that in there so it would reflect the,
I guess,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
if he
it's
changes
Because you
that
don't wanna
number to,
lose that as part of your budget.
right.
right.
he changes that to 21, he doesn't have a 3% fire department increase in his budget, does he? He has or 2%. I don't
Let's
know.
see.
No, it still would be 3% because it has to
Oh,
do with
yeah.
the budget, the percentage of change, and he level
That's
funded
right.
that.
Yeah,
So that's not gonna affect the bottom line, but it would look better on his.
It looked
his-
better, it's,
Yeah.
again, the optics of it.
yeah,
Right.
But as long as you all know and can explain to people when they ask that, we actually didn't overspend, it's just,
Yeah.
the revenue is just not shown here, not
So
revenue.
I guess I'll ask them one more question in on line 36, the actual for 22, 23. If we put 2/3 of the $30-odd thousand insurance claim,
It's
Into-
not sitting in that budget line, it's sitting in the insurance revenue line.
and where do we see that?
On the general budget?
On the general budget?
On the general budget.
So does that make the general budget deflated or inflated, or, because the general budget insurance line is gonna be less because of a fire department claim?
It's
well,
gonna
it's a revenue, usually
Right.
there wouldn't be a revenue in that line, right?
Yeah, we don't budget,
receive
we don't
funds.
budget for insurance.
It's money in, money out.
Yeah.
Right, but we don't
Well,
budget for
it's
insurance
money out of,
revenue.
it's out of the fire, but in the general fund.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a new thing that I think we have to look at and figure out what to
We
do.
might want to figure out a separate insurance revenue line for each department. Perhaps. It might be
Yeah, we
cleaner
did.
that way.
We had several claims just last year, and we.
Right.
You're gonna have some this year.
Well, now this week too,
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
Yep.
Right, because then we know where that money is and it doesn't escape your budget.
See, he would have one little revenue line, insurance claim.
That's right,
Right, that's what she's saying.
yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
that
Okay.
might be a good idea,
So,
just to keep it clean.
Because this.
But all that's
would
gonna
be
do is
changed.
show what came in, it's not
Right.
gonna show where it went.
yeah, we're
Yeah, but it
over.
would, you would have the expense line down below,
Yeah.
because it's coming, right now, it's coming out of this line.
Obviously, it didn't if you spent $34,000.
But we got a
Because-
$6,000 something
That
insurance
is
check
there.
that is there. That it was applied to that.
Right, but
32.
you've done other maintenance
Yeah.
other than just that truck. What I'm saying is you $34,000 just to that truck. So somehow that money's getting applied there. Otherwise, that
Or
line
something's not in there.
would be 50,000.
That's not my scope of work.
I'm just,
Figuring
Right,
Trying
no,
to-
you're right, so yeah, if it's only 27, there are numbers that haven't been applied to that yet, is that correct,
Sharon still has one that hasn't
Can
been
you bring
moved,
up-
she said.
Well, no, not a credit,
Yeah.
a cost.
Ian, can you bring up line 3060,
Of course, you've got
the code, the accounting number?
Maybe, how do I unhide?
Right,
click.
I'd like to have that number, Sharon look that number
But
up.
I did, See that?
We use the category.
But you didn't
that has
hide
the
it, Ian, you just.
Account numbers in.
No,
it.
I didn't. I
You
hit it.
shrink, you just shrink
Oh.
A.
Can you get the number, Brett?
Oh, yeah.
No, because A isn't,
They're
oh,
not
no.
shown here.
Ace.
He is.
Oh,
He's
is
where it's-
hiding
I'm looking
just-
at the
It's
same
just hiding,
spreadsheet
yeah,
he's manipulating.
just
so
Oh,
just
it's
moves
okay,
along.
you're
Oh,
watching.
it's not
it.
like hiding.
Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
So whenever he moves, this is moving.
Yeah, gotcha.
You got it there, Joel?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Wait, so I'm gonna do this again, so if
What's the
I,
account number for that one?
it's, 9590.
12/6/24/959. What were all the bills paid for 22, 23 in that line?
So it's 001, 006, 009590?
No,
12/6/24/95/90.
Sorry, I thought you just needed the four last numbers.
If they're all the same, if you're looking up in a sequence.
Oh, right. Sorry.
So 66, what was the one after 6?
24,
24.
95.90.
Drum roll.
Okay.
Are you looking
Yeah,
at Nemrick now?
so the only insurance one in here at the moment is the 6,073. And they paid 32,566 to Bulldog for that. They've got some other stuff here, but
What was paid in 22, 23 in that line? Can you tell us that, Sharon?
yeah. Oh, looks like 14,811.
All right,
That's
so
what's
it's accurate.
Okay.
All right.
But no insurance claim in that one?
Well, it would be,
No, because it's sitting in the insurance.
right, because it's
The
not
revenue.
part of this, because there isn't a way to put it a part of this. But I think, I mean, Val's suggestion that we look at a revenue line for insurance claims makes sense per department.
Mhm.
But
Because
then everything would have to show up.
In the
All the
expense line.
expense would have to show up there. That line would be a lot different than what it is.
right. It'd be overspent,
Mm.
And then but the insurance line would offset.
offset it,
Offset.
right,
Right,
right.
so that's the way that you're able to track that accurately, yeah, okay.
But you won't know you'll just have to have an actuals insurance line. You can't have a.
Right, you wouldn't have a budget,
You wouldn't have a budget.
line.
No,
right.
no,
Right.
which would be,
That
I
would
mean,
be not
Which is
best
fine.
I mean,
practice.
without that, it changes your 3%. If you had that in there, right, that would be lower. It's not actually 3%
No.
because
No,
of
it
those
wouldn't.
No,
insurance
the
claims.
No,
numbers,
because that number is only with the percentage of change to what
He
he's
changes.
budgets.
yeah.
Oh, right, yes, sorry.
So his actuals, he still has another $120,000 between now and July.
Yes, right, of course.
So, depending on where it is, overspend, underspend, that's the number
Yes,
that's the number we're gonna look at the end of the year.
Right, and that's the number that Brett needs, so that he knows, okay, this is how much I truly have left in this
Yeah.
budget line.
When it comes to vehicles, you have your planned, routine type maintenance, but then you have your unplanned expenses.
I never have any of that. I don't know what you're doing wrong.
Think about a large one that's coming our way, the part's been ordered, we haven't gotten the bill yet, so. Yeah, it's not cheap to maintain those vehicles, that's for sure.
So,
all right,
I think 3% is not bad.
yeah,
No, I cut in some places, but again, I can't control those annual increases from our vendors, the operating costs, obviously minimum wage, things like that, but, and then of course insurances, they go up, all that stuff. It's just some stuff I
Brett,
can't control.
are we going to have a, better word, deductible on the damage of the building?
Yeah, well, it's $1,000 deductible, right, Sharon?
Yes.
Yeah, every time I have a claim, that $1,000 deductible comes out of my operating budget, so, and I did that 3 times last
The
year.
claims this year is one claim, right?
Yes, so far. So hopefully nothing else happens anytime
Right.
soon.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on that part of the budget?
So this is just the fire department's capital equipment fund and their capital apparatus fund. So Brett had this in a slightly different format, just reversed in terms of the date. So I formatted it just as we've done other capital funds, so it makes it the same as you look through the town report and as we do budgeting.
Can you
But all the numbers-
enlarge a little bit?
Sure.
Or,
Um,
yeah, scoot the,
I'll enlarge it. So it matches and is more easily understood. But these numbers are copied across from the one that you provided in 2023. So that I updated those this afternoon. So those should all match what you've had previously. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the annual appropriation each year.
Ian, do I have of this version or access to?
No, but you will by the end of the evening. I'll send it to you, and then we can put it up and get that as a live link.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the spreadsheet I emailed Valerie and Ian 30 minutes before I came down here was the one I had been maintaining for years.
Okay.
And I was working with the numbers because I wanted to get to a place where at least looking at the current fiscal year and the information Sharon provided, so we knew tonight what the current balances were of each of these two accounts.
Right.
So if you all remember from last year, we received a very significant donation from an estate settlement. And they did say there would be a second payment, a final payment this year. And, kind of like, obviously I'm not waiting around for it all year. And then in December, they reached out and like, be looking out for a package from FedEx. And another $120,000 showed up.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So it totaled like $220,000, the donation. It
Awesome,
was
generous.
just generous, is not even the right word.
Right.
Right, and we've got the previous two, so I've added, a new line that wasn't in this originally was a donations line. And so I've added that in, and just from the information that I had, this was 43,125, and I put it in it came in, I think, Sharon, you said it was December of 23, is that right?
Yes,
I think
the
that's
most recent one.
Right, so I put that, the most recent one?
So
or
in
the-
December of
Yeah, this is
22,
our
Oh, yes, that's right.
second tranche.
we deposited over $94,400 in December of 22 into the capital equipment
So that would
account.
be the one.
So do I want to move this then to put it,
No, but it's two separate ones.
No, so in 2022, 23, you got the 90,000 plus up here where Ian is, the prior year.
Yeah, there it is, right there. Right.
That's where you would have put the 90,000?
94.
that's what I want to make sure of.
What's that trade-in resale? That's that number, 94,400 right there. The bottom,
That should go.
Oh, so that was
that's the donation.
Oh, got it, okay. So let's just put that
Watch this.
here and then take that there. Okay, that's what that was, great. And so that was the previous one for this year, that came as just one credit or one amount.
So
And then
Wow.
the latest one is this, and then there's also the other half of that, or the remaining of it, which is in the apparatus.
there were a total of 5 checks.
Oh, okay.
Two came in December of 22, and the entirety was deposited into the capital equipment fund, which is that 94,000.
Got it, okay, thank you.
This year, 3 checks came in December of 23 of varying amounts, the largest one being that
82.
So
Okay.
that one went into the vehicle fund.
Okay,
And
which should
the
be-
other 2, which totals that 43,125,
Got it,
went
all
into the
right,
equipment.
yeah, so I shouldn't ask for a
Okay.
separate checks, I should ask for
Okay.
total amount. Okay, so we're good here, so the 94.4, that's that previous one, that was this year, okay. So that changed the numbers a little bit.
The number that Sharon had provided us, I mean, if I'm looking at the right number, our balance today in the capital equipment fund is 121,464.12.
It's 123, 168 you have.
Yeah,
We're close.
yeah, right, there's obviously, yeah,
Those are Ian's numbers.
Ian's number, it's gonna be slightly off. No, I mean, it should be as accurate as the form, but maybe you have a slightly updated in terms of these amounts or costs or something. Okay. And then looking ahead, so we're looking at 24, 25. And so if we look down here, we've got, there we go. Oops, maybe I'll just get rid of
Well,
that.
what were we buying, what are you buying this year?
Well, that's what I'm looking at here,
Vehicle
so here,
education,
yeah.
agricultural.
With this donation, there's always things you would like to do, you know, that are, there's an expense tied to them, and you always put them on the back burner. You know, like a gear dryer, something our fire department really needs. It takes days to dry a set of turnout gear, and when you don't have a second set of compliant turnout gear to put on a firefighter, and you happen to need that stuff during that period of time,
Yeah.
it's just difficult. It'd be nice to expedite the drying time. So, but well, here we are, we're talking about fire service and dryers, you know, we're talking about a $7,000 or $8,000 expense.
Yeah.
So that is not reflected in here yet, but what is reflected, and yes, it's a vehicle, and I'll explain why I put it in here and not the vehicle plan. So over the years, you know, we, the firefighters, we use our privately owned vehicles for many things, to include driving to trainings. We use our privately owned vehicles to go install smoke and CO detectors in people's homes. We use them to bring dirty fire equipment back after calls in the middle of the night. We use them to drive to Rutland Town to take a class 2 nights a week for 9 months. You know, just last year alone, we paid over $3,000 in mileage to 2 firefighters just to go to Rutland Town and back. We had at least one vehicle damage claim. One of our firefighters' vehicles was damaged when a piece of equipment had a call, you know, because we're using it to transport equipment back. Dinged it, and well, there's our $1,000 deductible.
Yeah.
It's a given. So, you know, and instead of driving a $500,000 fire truck to go install a smoke detector or somebody's POV, you know, having a utility type truck, a pickup truck to do those types of things would be a really great thing. And the reason, again, I put it here is because I don't want it to be looked at as a reoccurring expense, because we've been given this gift. You know, if whatever we were to purchase, you know, maybe it'll last us 20, 25 years, you know, like our other vehicles.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't want it to be a part of I don't want it to be in a replacement plan.
Okay.
That's why I put it on the equipment side. That's why a year ago I chose to put that $94,400 in this account, for that reason.
Got it.
I'm not here tonight to ask you for your permission. I guess it's a good time just to kind of plant the seed with you all. You know, I guess generally looking to know if you somewhat support the idea, so we can start looking at options. You know, I had this crazy idea. I don't know if I'm sitting too close to these gentlemen, but you know, maybe we get an electric pickup truck. No, seriously, you know, because we have an indoor facility. However, you know, I also know there's issues with electric vehicles when they're not driven regularly.
Right.
You
And
know,
limitations of how far they can go.
yeah, that's the one I'm not so concerned about, but it's the
Hybrid.
lack of use. But
Right.
but you take the storms we've had Saturday and last Wednesday. You know, all the running around we were doing, you know, where a vehicle like that would come in handy.
Yeah, you had,
It's a vehicle you would utilize to transport firefighters
Yeah.
to an emergency if you needed that additional space, but it's not critical if it wasn't there, because it transported firefighters to a class in Rutland Town.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry critical equipment. But it's also part of a longer term plan once we get into the vehicle side of things, because, and these are just ideas, you know, the cost of vehicles, as you all know, are going up exponentially. It's just ridiculous. It's the best word I can come up with, especially when it comes to these fire vehicles.
Yeah.
You know, our vendors are telling us, the ones who, you know, delivered the $625,000 truck to the town of Bristol, which, because we have a capital plan, we had the money to buy it, which was wonderful, you know, but he told me, our salesman, the day he delivered the truck, if you were to order this truck today, it would cost you $700,000. Plan on a 6 to 8% increase annually. That was just one vendor. Other vendors have say 10 or 12. And it's not sustainable. And so it makes you look at our business, how we operate, how we utilize our vehicles. And if you're reading the news at all, you know, like the city of Virgins is looking at purchasing a couple of new vehicles, one of those being a rescue vehicle, like a heavy rescue truck. And if I'm not mistaken, that price tag was somewhere around $1.1 million. So because we have 2 pumpers that have, you know, a lot of storage space in our capital vehicle plan, you know, we have the replacement of our, what we call our mini pumper today, you know, another quick attack type unit. It's my long-term goal, again, this is just me thinking in a silo at the moment, you know, I'm not gonna make any decisions, but our current heavy rescue vehicle, we would not replace that. The equipment that's carried on that truck would be dispersed amongst the other vehicles we have. But we would definitely need this, some type of a vehicle to transport people, because heavy rescue today transports 5 people to any given emergency. More than just a motor vehicle crash, we take it to everything, because it's like our utility truck, because we sold our utility truck a few years ago. But again, it's all about, we wouldn't be lessening the amount of vehicles we have, but we'd be lessening the cost of the vehicle. So instead of, let's just say, a $1.2 million vehicle, we'd buy a $50,000 vehicle.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Okay.
So it's just thinking outside the box. You know, it's the regionalization concept in the fire service. It's a difficult conversation for many to have, because you have to be open-minded and look to the future to know that we have to think this way, because financially we can't continue to operate the way we are operating today, because we'll just put ourselves out of business. You know, we have to learn to do more with less equipment. We have to learn to share resources, you know, with our neighboring towns, which we do today, don't get me wrong. But, you know, as I jokingly say, you know, we all want one of everything, but we all don't need one of everything. So again, it's just really looking at the fire services we provide, and how can we do it differently, more cost effective.
For your utility pickup truck, you have room in your location?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, the electric vehicle is an interesting one. Obviously, there are models. Ford has the Lightning. There's Rivian as well that have their thing. I don't know what the carrying capacity of that is.
I haven't
That's
looked
a
into
newer
it at
company.
all. It's just, because we have this luxury of
Yeah.
having a heated building to keep our vehicles in,
Right.
that's more enticing. But again, you know I have friends who have electric vehicles, and because of their line of work, you know, they don't drive their personal vehicle all the time, and they've had issues because they're not running it.
Right.
So I'd have to do a lot more investigating, but it was an idea, you know,
Yeah.
it's trying to be environmentally
It could be
responsible.
hybrid.
Huh? Or hybrid even, yeah, sure.
Right.
Yeah, but a hybrid, you wanna make sure you get a plug-in, because my sister has one and it's the same thing. If you don't drive it,
Right.
We
I
would
mean,
certainly do our due diligence and our homework to, you know, what would make the most sense for us,
Right.
how we're going to utilize it.
So question for you, Brett, I know you don't want this in your replacement plan for now, but what would you do? I mean, because once you have this, your guys are gonna get used to it, so you're
No,
gonna
well,
want.
I think you
eventually-
deal with that 20 years down the road,
We dealt
when
with
none
this
of us are
once,
sitting at this table.
we dealt with this once
Maybe me.
before. We had a vehicle that we used for this purpose, and it got to the point where the expense to repair it was more than what it was worth, and at that point, we made the decision. You know, Brett and I were in charge at the time, and we made the decision that now wasn't the time to do it.
I see.
And we let it go. But it certainly did everything he's asking to do here with it.
Okay.
And, you know,
Paid for
I
itself.
think, I think given the circumstances, he's on the right track.
I mean, if you're looking for something that's gonna last 20 years, it's probably not the electric one, right? I think it's too early to
Right.
tell what that's gonna be. So my inkling would to be explore traditional fuel, gas for this, because they've got decades
Well, I
and
mean,
can stand behind that, you know?
If you ever looking at the years of our vehicles, you know, we
Right.
do a really great job of maintaining them, keeping them
Right,
clean,
exactly.
which is essential to keep the bodies in shape. But, you know, we're driving around today a 1993, a 2001,
Right.
a 2009, and there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, so that would be, I don't know, this is probably plastic for air. Yeah, but I mean, so that would be, my recommendation would be, even though I like the idea of electric, it's just,
Not
the-
feasible.
yeah, and the potential costs, like, I think Hertz they're getting rid of their Teslas because of the cost to repair, mostly from accidents, just the bodywork and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it was a great idea at the start, but now,
Well, the batteries right now, aren't they a 10-year?
yeah,
They're saying 10-year life, so that just doesn't make sense for what you're doing.
Right.
I guess really, and
exactly.
I also say it because I want you guys to know that, you know, we think about this stuff too.
Yeah.
We know
Oh,
the
yeah.
world is changing, and
And, take, for instance, Saturday morning, You know, there were 4 or 5 going out, and the truck we just purchased in August for $658,000, going around helping the town crew cut trees out of the
Yeah,
village streets, when they could have taken a $50,000 truck, and,
right.
but they couldn't get in the brush truck. There's only 3 people who can fit in that. You know, it's a 2-door.
Oh, throw them in the back.
And, you know, as
Okay.
far, and if you think it makes more sense to show it in the vehicle side, I would leave that up to you all to make that decision.
No, I was just, you know, future wise,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
eventually it will probably get to that
Times will
point.
change, if
Yeah,
but
this
we-
vehicle lasts 20 years,
Yeah.
times will be different.
When I joined the
There'll be
fire
different
service,
needs.
we were operating 7 vehicles. You know,
I-
today we operate 5.
Yeah.
Right.
I personally, my personal opinion would be change that F-150 to a 2 or 350. Because you always put
Well,
stuff
I
on.
will go to the fire department.
Right, you always
and
put
ask
stuff
for
on, you never
input.
take stuff off.
Okay.
And for weight wise, and that
So
would be
you-
my
so this
only
is-
recommendation.
So this is for this year, you purchased before,
I put it in here, you know, and hoping to get support at some point, but like I said, I'd mentioned the idea to the fire department, but, you know, if I have an idea that the select board is open to the idea, I will go back to the department and ask them to all, you know, think about all the things, all the ways this vehicle could be utilized, from towing our enclosed trailer that hauls our antique fire truck,
Which
how it would be
I've
used.
told
what
it
would
all
be the
around the
best
state,
vehicle.
never got a dime for it with my
Well,
truck.
I guess my opinion is this is found money, it's not taxpayer
Yeah.
money.
Well, yeah,
so-
and that was why I don't,
So,
not that I
mean,
wanna
I have no
throw it or
problem with that.
waste it,
right,
but I just think, I look at all the
I mean, it's
times.
an opportunity.
It's an opportunity, exactly, that's a nice way to put it, it's an
Yeah.
opportunity, so.
Yeah, and you know, the same thing with firefighters using their own vehicles, it's like, yes, it'd be great if we had the amount of vehicles that are needed, but I mean,
Bristol's
this is a
firefighters
small ask, I
Title
think.
to mileage
Yeah.
reimbursement, should they choose to put, they don't, they never have. It's in
And it's-
town policy, however, I proactively went to these 2 particular individuals, you know, because we don't offer the initial training program in Addison County every year anymore, it's every other year. So if you join in an off year, you're gonna drive to Rutland County somewhere.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can't ask these working people to spend their gas to drive all, I mean, it's just
You said
Yeah.
2 nights a week for 9 months?
2 nights a week for 9 months.
Yeah, that's a big ask.
To Rutland instead of Millbury.
Right,
Yeah.
big difference, big difference.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that
That's
was,
exciting.
Yeah,
so let's,
and the only other thing in this capital plan that I think is of interest that we started to talk about in the operating budget was I did down the road budget that, well, maybe that yours doesn't show it, yeah, right there. So that $50,000 to perform some feasibility study,
oh, yeah.
so that was
Yeah,
put
I was
in
curious
there
about
a year ago, before we even had this idea of putting a tower up behind the fire station. And to be honest with you, you've seen some of the email correspondence. You know, our new neighbor out back, David Littlesdorf, is
Yeah.
that right?
Littlesdorf, yeah.
Littlesdorf. He and another gentleman who was working on an initiative to install an FM antenna somewhere, and he needed a place to do it. So, you know, he caught wind that we might do this, and I said, yeah, we talked about it, but then we realized there were several roadblocks in the way, and one of them being it's a zoning thing.
Right.
And I said, I'm all in favor of it, but tackling that zoning thing, you know, I'm gonna look to the select board. If this is important to the town, you know, because potentially there's a cost savings down the road, because we don't want to keep renting at the tower here in Bristol, and it could be a revenue generating source at some point down the road,
Yeah,
or if the town has other needs. I certainly like the idea, I just, taking on the zoning battles and all that stuff, that's
Yeah.
just,
No,
I need you
I
people
think
to
it
do
was a
that.
conditional use thing, and
It's a public good or
Good,
something,
right,
there's
yeah.
ways around
certificate of
it.
public good, and, yeah,
I
there are
guess-
ways around it,
I
but
know it's important to you all that we continue to look at this, and it is to me, so I guess at this point, I'm looking to you all for a little additional guidance, like, hey, Brett, we really wanna do this. So let's find out, let's come up with a plan how we're gonna tackle this.
So the one thing I heard in talking to the radio people, they said if you could get a hold of a ladder truck and they rig an antenna to it and go with just a portable radio, set up at the station,
Yeah.
use the radio, see where your coverage is.
Yeah.
And any other site that you thought you might want
If
to
you
try.
remember, those tests were already done. rescue squad paid for them,
but not physically.
not physically, right?
And that's what was recommended to me, was if you could get a hold of a ladder truck where you could go out and stick that antenna up 100 feet, and then you could try it wherever you wanted to.
Yep.
And know which spot worked best. Go to your spots where you have problems and see if you can hit it. That was the suggestion that was made to me, but that's your call.
And this is tied to the grant we just applied for, and I just learned tonight we're not getting. You know, it's not a great setup we have today, because your 3 chief officers are literally relying on a text message from Green Mountain Power that says the
Yeah,
power
power.
may be out
Right.
at 569 Moncton Road.
Yeah.
And they're typically right, you know, and we quickly find out, and we call dispatch on the phone and tell them to switch over. But the fact that it's not like when the power goes out at your fire station today, that big monster out back just fires up and is running everything. You don't gotta worry about a thing.
Couldn't, at least for you guys' benefit, you 3 chief officers, couldn't a 4th text go to Shelburne Dispatch? Said Bristol's out of
Well,
electricity?
just using the night,
I don't know.
the morning, early morning hours of the 10th alone, I mean, so Shelburne dispatches for 50-something agencies, and there was 1 dispatcher on duty. Think they were busy? And we always keep in back the mind that we're not their only customer.
Right.
So we try to be self-sufficient.
Okay, so I just switched over the tab. This is the apparatus capital.
And does this one show the donation, Ian?
Yeah, the 82.
Yeah, should be that.
Oh, yeah, right there, okay. So. Vehicle. 363, 411, what do you got? Balance 380,
Oh, excuse me.
total available.
Depending on the year, where you're looking.
Well, again, I'm going on the
21,
numbers.
22?
23, 24, our current balance.
Yeah,
These are the numbers that Sharon, you provided Valerie,
you-
Ian, and I just recently.
Yes, after we did all the transfers on
Transfers.
Friday.
okay.
So the number I have, which
Yeah.
may not be right
All
either,
appropriations have
is
been.
363, 411.
All right, so what have I got?
353.
That's what should be in there.
I mean, so these numbers are based on, obviously, it's the opening balance. So if we adjust this, which maybe the 2020, 21 is incorrect, it just would then change all these.
It's off by
Yeah.
17.
You know, and I know we had another
Yeah.
$4,000 or $5,000 expense related to the new pumper that came out of this plan that we
Okay.
would have paid last fall. I don't know if that number's reflected in here.
Yeah, but we can, I mean, this was new, and again, based on that 2023 one that you sent, so we can just adjust these
Yeah.
and get that correct.
So, yeah, we can figure that out offline here, but, you know, again.
I
just-
recommend eliminating the FY 21 and 22 columns, and maybe even 23 column, and just begin the FY 24 with the current balance that we have. And so
Okay.
that way.
And Valerie, that current balance is
So she-
379,
She's saying
853?
23, 24 we keep? or-
23, 24, the figure that Sharon gave us last week.
This one here.
I would
Just-
recommend just starting that, using that number in that cell and just eliminate those other columns.
It's 363.
Well, I mean, the 2024.
76, 411.
The other one,
Yeah, you gotta go back one.
yeah, the other column to the left.
Yeah.
You said 24 though, I'm in 24.
Yeah, 23.
No, you're in 25.
24, 25.
Aren't we,
So.
we're right, hold
But
on.
the figure
This
that
is
Sharon
the-
gave us is for 24, FY 24. Current.
Okay, yeah, but we have
You're
23,
saying
24,
what
and
number?
24, 25, so.
I need both numbers. You need to say 23, 24 or 24, 25.
The number that Sharon gave us last week should go in the 23, 24 column,
Okay, thank you.
At the top,
right? Because
Yeah.
that's the current balance as of now,
All right.
okay.
3,
in this
6,
fiscal year.
363, 411,
363, 411.
76 cents.
76 scores.
All counts.
Okay, so with these, I'm just gonna hide these. Okay. So does that look right? Is that correct? What's your total available after the donation? Is it 570? Or are these calculations mucked up?
So that 363. So that includes the 125 appropriation.
Oh, okay,
So it's gonna be,
So it needs to be-
so
it needs to-
363
it
is
needs to be-
less 125.
right, hang on a second.
Ah, right.
Well, the 24, you don't put that in until the first part of June.
No, it's in the,
If you're typing, it's not showing up here.
No, it's not.
Okay.
For my benefit, you included the appropriation that was approved by the taxpayers last year, correct?
In March 2023,
Right.
yes.
Okay, that's it.
That is all,
Even though it's not been put in yet, usually you don't put it in the second payment, right, taxes,
well, no, it varies,
minus 120.
depends on the year,
but it's in there
it's in there.
as an add-in, okay.
Yeah.
You may not have
If you start
transferred.
waiting until after April, then people
I have
get confused
238,
because you've
Yeah,
already
that's what
approved
I-
the ones for the next year.
Okay,
So I'm putting this in here. Oh, yes, and then including.
And then you have to add in, yeah, the 82.5.
so total available is 445.
So that should be right, unless we've already added in the 82.5.
The 363, 411 includes the 82.5.
All right.
Yes.
We're getting there. We're
We'll get it
slowly
right.
getting there. Hang on. So,
238,000 after you bought a $650,000 truck.
155, 912. You'll get it.
eventually we're gonna get there. Hey-oh, there we go. Okay, terrific.
2930 payment, 700,000 for the engine tanker. Engine
All
tanker.
right.
What's your question?
The 2930 estimated actual costs up minus
Where are we
7.
looking?
29, year
Right here.
2029, 2030, that's 70. Is that for the new second, an engine tanker?
So, let's see
Replacement of the
here. So,
2006?
That's the tanker.
yeah,
yes.
capital plans, now, and it's a tanker.
Right.
Tanker,
Right.
period. Not a pumper tanker.
Okay, I just,
So,
because I didn't think you had
and I
enough.
think I don't, and that's why it's a tanker only.
Okay,
So again, this is a living document, these capital plans, and again, it's the fire surf changes and our niche change. Our 2007 Spartan pumper tanker, we're fortunate to have this wonderful mechanic, diesel mechanic, who is now a member of the fire department and has lots of knowledge and insight. And we've always talked about 20 years, we push it to 25, we get in trouble. But given the cost of these vehicles, let's just say the 2007 pumper tanker, if it will last the town 30 years, then great, it lasts the town 30 years.
Yeah.
If we're not spending lots of money on, maintenance that we didn't plan for, and I know that's always a gamble. So to answer Joel's question, looking down the road in this kind of living document, we may get to a point where we have to make a decision. All right, the town of Bristol today has 2 Class A Type 1 type pumpers. We're very fortunate in that front. And is it feasible, depending on how Bristol changes and grows, do we need to maintain that? Maybe we need to, I hate to say the word, but down the road, maybe need like a ladder truck. They're all very expensive things.
Right.
So, but the immediate plan for the immediate future calls for an estimated expense of around, was that 385?
Mhm.
That's for that quick attack unit I've been talking about for the last year that we have seen. It was at the fire station. This is like an off the shelf. You go to a dealership and they got 100 of them. They mass produce these, it's not a custom truck. And it would
That's
replace
the
our mini pumper, which it has a 2009 chassis, but it's a 1993 pump on it, which has its own motor.
Mhm.
And it's undersized. It's a 1150 gallon per minute pump. And for what that truck's primary role is, we need a 1500 gallon per minute pump. But that's a 5-person cab, where our truck today is only a 2-person cab. And it carries more equipment. It's just, that's the next truck we need to replace in our capital vehicle plan. And that's just an idea I threw around, and, we haven't made any decisions yet.
Okay.
But that's where we're at today.
All right.
And, in appropriations, I know, they've gone up over the years. The board and the taxpayers have been extremely supportive, recognizing the increase in vehicle costs, but every year we gotta look at this stuff and what can we sustain? I know it's a hard conversation to have, but yeah.
Okay. All righty.
I don't have a crystal ball.
How was, Ian cut it out too quick, but
Sorry,
how
I have it
many
right
years,
here. What do you need?
how many years were we going for the 125,000 appropriation, which we've been? what,
2 or 3 more years, and
Yeah,
then it goes
At
up to
least 3 more
150.
years?
Yeah, at least 2 I saw.
Well, I didn't, of course, could be right too.
Because we switched to 150 in 2020,
2033.
2033.
Yeah, 2033.
So that's another 10 more years.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I mean, we've been doing 125 for, and we may look at this as a group in 5 more years and say, you know,
We're
we
gonna
have a
have to
year
up
that we've done well, and we, you know, as the economy maybe grows and we get more tax base, maybe we'll say, maybe this is the year to bump that 125 to 140 or 135.
Or we do a one-time shop from the undesignated fund.
You could do that
balance or
too,
something,
Baker.
Right, just
Yep,
all
Yep.
depends.
Because once you increase that, that's then every year, so it's, you know, it's a large chunk of money that you're adding.
because you got that 1.1 at 2035, 40,
37,
38,
yeah,
37.
1.1 million.
Is that, you built in that 6% kind of, or did you just plug a number?
Yeah, I don't know.
Took
if
that
I
what we
shared
paid
that.
now,
I
and
came up
You
with
said that, they said at 68%?
yeah, I have another spreadsheet I created. It shows the increase of these vehicles with a 6 to 8%.
It's pretty,
increase.
it's pretty simple math. The one we
Yeah.
bought 20 years ago was
300, and this one's 650.
330,000. This one's 660, so
230.
230, the Spartan,
the 97
was
That was
230.
Yeah, so this one was almost 3 times as much, within $2,000 of 3 times as much, or, yeah, 22, 3,200,
It's
3,200.
important to keep setting money aside, but
Yep.
not look too far ahead as far as what you're gonna do with it,
Right.
because that need could change.
Right,
Right.
Yep.
Needs to be fluid.
okay.
Yep, okay,
It's just a guess.
But the thing is, I really appreciate is the planning component, the
Right.
fact that we have these funds available to make these capital purchases, and you're not going to the, yes, it's taxpayer dollars at the end of the day, it's my money, it's your money, it's,
But it's a little at a
Okay,
time.
but it's a
not-
little bit more, not a big jolt, right?
I tell you, I've had 5 or 6 people in the city of Virgins ask me in the last month, "Have you guys, you just got a new fire truck here last August?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "How much, what's your bond payment on it?" I go, "It's paid for." And we got 10% off because we paid for it. I said, "We have a capital bond payment,
Capital
building
equipment.
fund." "Well, we ought to get that here," instead of.
On top of the
You
bond,
take that as a voter of Virgins?
on top of the bond, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we were fortunate,
Not
we,
looking forward to that tax bill.
yeah, we figured, we were fortunate, we got this started at just the right time.
Yeah.
The truck got paid off and we were able to
Future
sink some
planning.
money away and
Mhm.
Okay,
Maybe that 97 did some more good than we thought, right, Peter? We got it paid off. We took that payment, made it a capital.
any other questions for Brett's budget?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you.
Am I the only
Thanks,
thing on
Rick.
your agenda?
No.
No.
You wish.
This
I wish.
this
We
is a
wish,
regular
rather.
meeting, right?
No, it's a budget.
It's a
meeting.
budget meeting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
that.
for your time and for your ongoing support. I really do appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
Right, our next item is capital projects updates, Pine Street
guys.
water
Good
line,
evening.
See ya.
See you, Brett.
Pine Street water line replacement, Bristol West water line replacement, design phase, water service line inventory, Basin Street improvement projects, Briggs Hill Road, Lincoln Road, Riverbank repair, Eagle Park fishing platform, sidewalk improvements, draft capital improvement plan, and so on.
Right, right. No, I know that Jill and Steve are online here.
Partridge in a pear tree.
I'm gonna share my screen, and I sent late this afternoon, I sent out the summary that I was compiling. That I hopefully will be a concise way to show some of this stuff. And part of the reason for putting it all together in this way is to get kind of a big picture view of what we're dealing with, of what we're all working with. Are you seeing my screen with the
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jill and Steve might want to jump in with more specifics, but just very quickly, The Pine Street Waterline Replacement Project, Step 2 design, that's finished. That was done. That was done before the construction needed to be done. But I just wanted to show that that project was budgeted at $42,000. It came in at less than that, 37 plus. And so that's complete. So that came in under budget. The construction project is complete. The loan amount, we applied for $885,000. It came in under budget, 767,000 plus some change. And a little bit, I think that's the bottom line figure we can expect. So again, came in under budget, but both of those projects, though the expenses for both of those projects are currently coming out of our general fund, our operating budget, because we have not yet received the loans through the state. So it's kind of a shell game in terms of cash flow. But so far, Sharon and Chris are making it work. But we're putting in a lot of effort to get those loan documents processed so we can get those reimbursements.
Is it Val, for the loan documents? Is it on the state side?
It's on, yeah, the applications have been submitted. All of our documentation has been submitted. It's just waiting and waiting, waiting. The design one, this one was submitted, the loan application was submitted in June of 2022, a year and a half ago. The construction application was submitted in August of this past year. And apparently they're just in some pile on someone's desk. We're not really sure. We've reached out quite a number of times to try to move things along, but anyway.
We have enough of a buffer for those numbers in terms
apparently,
because it's coming out of the general.
Well, we're also,
you go ahead, sorry.
we're also submitting reimbursements from other projects. So we're hopefully kind of backfilling with reimbursements from other things, but yeah, Sharon and Chris are somehow making it work. We did get the interim, the tax anticipation note loan, which I think they needed to tap into once, but that was not available for these projects because that is a tax anticipation loan, not a bond anticipation loan. So it's just a kind of a revenue shell game in a way, but they're making it work. So that's just a view of that. And then the waterline replacement project, which Steve is heavily involved in right now, that has a total budget of $279,000, and we're a little ways into it. He can give us more of an update on that in a moment. And the waterline inventory project that Jill is up to her eyeballs in, Jill and her team are up to their eyeballs. We have a loan approval for $91,000 and change. They're about $36,000 into it. And the nice thing about this particular loan is that it's going to be 100% forgiven. At least that's what we expect at the end of the day. So that's good news. But in the meantime, we're carrying these costs with the expectation of getting reimbursed. But it's also an illustration of some of the major stuff that's going on right now for the water system. And those projects specifically are the water department budget. They're not coming out of the general fund. So then just very quickly, the Lincoln Road project, which is underway, well, sort of underway. The total project cost is estimated to be over $600,000. We've got one grant for secured and another grant pending, $40,000. And so at the end of the day, we're going to be looking at a local match for the Lincoln Road project of over $390,000. And that is teed up to begin this coming spring or summer, because we have Masterson's bid that they agreed to hold with a slight inflation factor of $15,000 if needed. It's kind of an allowance. But we've got to get that project done. We've got that much grant funding, and it's pretty critical that we proceed with that, because the more that the river undermines the river bank, it's going to threaten the roadway, and it's a pretty critical link for the area. And then the Eagle,
they'll be coming down my road.
and then the Eagle Park fishing platform is somewhat good news that FEMA had authorized up to $176,000 in change. Their share was 90%. It's also coming in under budget. We are looking at a total project cost of actual costs of about maybe $120,000. And the town share at the end of the day is going to be a little over $8,000, which I would propose comes out of the Conservation Reserve Fund. So I think that's going to be in pretty good shape. Basin Street project, that's pretty complicated. A lot of moving parts on that one. 3 different grant funding sources. Total project estimated cost is over $730,000. We've got over $526,000 in grants. The town's local share so far is going to be over $200,000. That's going to be spent over at least 2 years, probably 3. So we have some time to kind of pace that out. At the moment, based upon the projected budgets, the difference between the grant funding and the committed, the engineering contract and the municipal project manager contract, we've got about $452,000 remaining for construction, but over time, that's probably not going to be enough. And the other one I wanted to mention, and we need to build this into our capital planning, is the decision recently sealed to purchase the 4-acre parcel at the corner of Hewitt Road and Route 116 for a future public works facility. And that agreement, minus the $1,000 deposit, would be $152,000 over 10 years at 6% interest. So we will want to budget approximately $25,000 for 10 years to accomplish that purchase. And I would recommend the town does not need to borrow for it. I would recommend that it can come out of the capital building fund because it's a capital building related expense ultimately. That's my recommendation. And then the other ones are big plate topics are that Briggs Hill, our July storm repair, still kind of putting our heads together about that. There's a lot to report on sidewalks, the police station relocation and the public facilities relocation, public works facility relocation. So that's a high level overview of some of the major capital projects we have going on. And of course, that does not reflect stuff going on in other departments like the rec department and their skate park plans and some other projects that might be going on that aren't quite on my radar. But anyway, that's a quick peek at some of the capital projects.
Terrific. Thank you, Val.
Sure. So while Steve and Jill are here, maybe if they want to offer some more info about the inventory and the design process.
Sure. We're in the 4th quarter of the Bills and Steelers game, so I'll make this really fast. You covered just about everything that I was going to cover, Valerie, but can you pull up the total project cost summary that I sent you the other day?
You didn't tell us who was winning, Steve.
Actually, Buffalo's up 31-17, and they've got the ball with 3 minutes and 57 seconds.
Okay.
I'm welcome. No.
Val, can you pull those up for Steve?
Sorry, I had to step out of the room for just a quick second.
I'm sorry. Do you have the
Sorry.
total project cost summary that I sent to you on?
Yes, I do. Let me. Yep, hang on.
Okay. So, normally when we complete a project, we try to summarize everything from beginning to end. Obviously you folks took a bond out for $885,000 and the intent was to cover the entire project, right? That's design, construction, quality assurance, as-built, legal, everything. The bottom line is, I think the entire project was under budget, not just construction, but every single line item, we were at or below construction, I think, or estimates, on just about everything. The big one, obviously, was construction. You guys got a great bid. You had the one lowball bid from Munson. It was more or less $90,000 less than my estimate. it was so far below the others, I was just amazed that they bid it, and you can really see that in your bottom line. Had they come in more or less on my estimate, which was pretty much the average bid, we'd be right on target, but it's great news, right? We're gonna be $118,000 more or less under your total bond amount in our estimate for the project. So it really doesn't get any better than that from a financial perspective. We were, in summary, under budget. We were a couple of weeks ahead of schedule, not necessarily for paving, but for the overall completion of the project. I think in general, the feedback that I got from the public was really positive. It's pretty intrusive type of construction. You always have a couple of issues here and there and some hiccups, but we didn't have any major hiccups. And I can tell you there were many, many, many more times the number of folks that came up and thanked Jill and myself and everybody involved in that project than we heard from complaints. So I think all in all, it really was successful. And I want to thank Jill and Cyrus in particular. Those guys were super to work with. And I think everybody made a great team. Everything we needed, or anytime we needed some help with something, we're dealing with 100 and more or less 25-year-old water lines. We found a lot of stuff that was unknown. Didn't know where it went or didn't know who it was going to impact. Those guys were there for us, whether it was morning or night or whatever. And if they couldn't make it, they certainly gave their best guess and input over the phone or whatever we needed to do. So I'd like to also thank Valerie. I don't think you guys realize how much she does for the town. She did a ton of work with PR, which really made this project go well. When the public's informed and they understand what's happening, we get a ton less complaints. And I have to believe that you folks on your end didn't hear that many complaints, short of maybe traffic and that sort of thing, which is going to be normal in construction project. But generally speaking, I think everybody was pretty darn happy. So I look at it as a complete success. Hopefully you folks do as well. And then moving on to the next project. So any questions on Pine Street?
Yeah, we had to bond, we obviously had to bond for the total amount. Have we still got forgiveness coming on that?
Valerie?
You're muted, Val.
Your microphone's muted.
Yep, got it. I honestly don't recall the details of forgiveness on that particular project. But then we got bond approval for up to that amount, but we're not going to have to borrow that amount. We're only going to borrow the actual expenses that were incurred.
Right.
I understand that, but I thought that the whole reason for doing this was because we were guaranteed 50% forgiveness.
Right.
And is that,
right.
and I guess that poses the question, is that 50% on that 767,000? Or is it just on the 621?
Not having seen the loan documents, I really can't tell you, but
It should be on the 765.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be two different loan documents. The first will be for engineering. That'll get modified with an amendment for the construction portion of it. So it'll be the same forgiveness amount on both. And,
Good.
So we should be on the hook for around 400,000 then.
correct.
That's good to clarify.
Which would be a bond.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but we had to bond for the total amount.
that's right.
Bond
And
or
we're
take
only-
out a short-term note.
No, we had to bond. Well, we didn't bond, we had to have a
Bond approval.
voter approval
Approval to.
for the
bond.
total project, yes. We haven't done anything only out of the general fund so far.
Or didn't we sign a $1 million short-term note with some kind of something with the
And
bank?
that was a tax anticipation note,
Tax
Yeah,
anticipation.
that wasn't for that.
For that.
not a bond anticipation note.
Right. When we get the final numbers, then we'll bond that, correct?
Yes.
Well, that's great. Steve, I'd like to thank you, Jill and Cy, and Val, of course. I think we thank her constantly, but thank you all for your work on that. I mean, it's so refreshing to hear that you have a giant project like that had little to no issues, that you came in under budget in most areas. Like you couldn't ask for a better way to end that project.
Right.
especially given the nature of the project in that it was an absolute necessity, that our water lines were far older than what they should be. And this was just the beginning of this kind of process and project over the next however many years, 10, 20, however many we've decided this is going to be over. But that's great.
Maybe that's a good
begs the
segue to the design phase for Bristol West.
Right.
I got one more question. Full of questions tonight. Pump times, have we gained anything with this upgrade?
Good question.
She's smiling, but
She's
she's not on mute.
I would not say that this was significant. The best reduction in pump times that we gained were when we fixed the leak on, what was that, West Pleasant Street?
Liberty? Was there one on Liberty? No.
West Pleasant or high school?
The one at the high school, that was a good one. That one definitely decreased our pump time. The one that popped up in front of Peaker's mother-in-law's house on a holiday this summer, that one slowed the pump times down. The one over by the pump house that was a 1-inch wide open, that slowed the pump times down. So there's been 3 major repairs. And when we turn the blow off, that's always awesome, right? But there's that dead end non-loop on that. Someday, if we could loop that, that would be super ideal to not have to have that blow off at the end. There's a couple more of those to do this spring, but yeah, as we replace all of the old water lines, we should see significant improvements in pump time, because it'll just be consumption. It won't be, main line leaks and service line leaks. I'm making an assumption here that old service lines are going to be addressed as we move ahead.
Do we have any to address on Pine Street this summer, or?
Three.
Okay.
3 on the customer side that should be addressed, and it is going to be a matter of how to finagle that one, right? Because it's their side, and there is some language inside of the ordinance that does allow you to put a little bit of pressure, but it's also, looking for financial support if there is any from any kind of funding sources. Because there's people that can afford it, and there's people that really can't. And if there's some type of funding that would be fair to everybody, I think that would be fantastic. So, the big giant leaks are the ones that make the pump run time go into, like, we can't even keep up with it, and we would lose water. We would run out of water. So, like, all those have been addressed. It's just that, like, probably anywhere from 40,000 to 80,000 gallons a day. They're not going into people's houses or businesses. It's going in the ground. So that's what we'd like to get rid of.
We're recycling it.
Yeah, we're watering the ground with really nice spring water.
Steve, I know for a fellow that lived on that street and lives on that street, it did turn out really well. I mean, Munson, was low bid, and I had my speculation on whether to have them do it because of 10 years ago or 8 years ago, but no, it really turned out well. They
Yeah, good
were
crew.
there every day, and
Yeah.
you and
It
Jill
really makes a difference.
keeping an eye on it, and Valerie from the material or from the office side with all the signage and things like that, and all the front porch forums and the emails, the Facebook really helped a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Well, and also I think Munson got the message from the previous time. And
Yeah, I do believe that.
they changed out their personnel, and they approached it with a very different attitude. So it was very good, a very positive experience.
And I know Munson won't put Pike Industries out of work for paving, that's for sure.
No.
It's not their goal. I don't think it's their
Not their
goal.
goal, no.
Paving is not fun. It's really, really sticky.
It's not their forte either. They're good at putting pipe in the ground, but
Jill, a question on the Pine Street customer service line matter. Would any of those affect paving? Should they be done before the road gets paved? Does it matter?
No, the curbs are in the right of way. Nope.
Okay. Good.
you want to touch on Bristol West?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so we're well underway with Bristol West. We have all of the baseline surveying done, which means all 8 of the streets have been surveyed so far. Cy and I went out last, I want to say it was Thursday, anyway.
Yeah, Thursday, I saw you guys out.
We located all of the existing water mains except for West Park and School, and those are coming up. I hope to get that done this week. And then we're going to start working with Jill and Cy on where we want to, at least from a preliminary perspective, suggest that we locate all the new water mains. There's a bunch of streets that are really narrow. And in the areas, I think there's a couple of streets that we're probably going to want to try to use the green belts as much as we can. Paving costs, if I use Pine Street as an example, paving costs at the end of the day are about $40 a lineal foot. So it adds up when you start talking 10,000 lineal feet. So anything we can do to try to stay out of the asphalt. Number one, I think it's easier for Jill and Cy or whoever happens to be the water operator down the road. And I think it's a lot less intrusive in terms of people's lives if we can stay out of the roadway and maintain one-way traffic. So that's going to be our goal. We're not going to be able to do that everywhere. It just wouldn't be feasible, but I think there are a couple of streets where that would be a good option if we can find a way around it. I think what we'll do is probably come to you folks when we get through that stage and say, here's what we'd like to recommend, and talk to Valerie and the select board about how they want to present this to the public, because when we get in those instances in the greenbelt, there's going to be some tree removal, there's going to be some other things that would be required, and those kind of things always get political. So I think it's good to have public input and make sure that we at least listen to what the concerns might be of the public before we just march ahead and do it. So, okay. Our goal, by the way, at the end of this, hopefully is to be ready for a bond vote in November, which means I've got to have the design more or less at the 95% mark by the end of October, because we need to have the, really a little before that, middle of October. I've got to have the cost of Valerie so she can put together the bond information. So that's our goal. I'd like to have the project at 100% somewhere around the 1st of January. We will, assuming the bond passes, we will, and you folks want to go ahead with the bond, I think you do, but we will hopefully be applying for DWSRF funding in January of next year for this project. And for folks that may not remember the larger schedule that we talked about, that means that funding won't be approved until June or July of next year, or sorry, 25. And I would imagine we would go to bid over the winter of 25, spring of 26, with a goal of starting early in 26. So it'll give us plenty of time to plan. There's a lot of planning that's going to be required in terms of, how do we want to handle construction on each one of these streets? There's 8 different streets. We don't want to be digging up, 5 streets at the same time. We'll probably do this over 2 summers. And it's just going to take some coordination. So we'll get there, but we're making good progress. Jill's working on her side too. Jill, you want to update everybody on the service line inventory, because your work at the end of the day kind of affects mine. We're working together at least next spring on that.
Steve, before she gets started, can I ask a question about the streets?
Yep.
Eric was in front of us last week. Public Works was with his budget last week with us. And he talked about, as a group, we talked about drainage on Munsell Avenue, from about the high spot down to headed west, or headed, south, down Munsell to West Street, and do that drainage.
Yep.
And it was talk, I believe, to do it summer of 24. But I think that all depends on where the water line's gonna go and things. That's just keep Eric in mind, right, Valerie, because I thought we wanted to do that drainage this summer. And if the drainage is gonna be on the same side of the street, the water line's gotta be on, and it's gotta go under it, it may not be prudent to put it in now.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Eric specifically about that. So, I mean, I know it was on his agenda.
Yeah.
We haven't talked, I don't know, is he putting in, are there gonna be dry wells? Is that what he's thinking?
Dry wells hooked together, and then I believe Picker fill
pipe to the West Street drainage,
pipe to the West Street drainage.
because it's downhill from the police station all the way to West Street.
And Eric has a plan for that?
Well, he's got a idea.
Okay,
Him and Picker walked it, I think, and got some ideas in their mind.
you got a concept at least, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly talk to him about that.
Okay, Jill.
All right, so the service line inventory, just so that you guys understand, is not just the customer side. It's water mains, town side, and the customer side. So the water mains are all identified for all 700 connections. The town side of the services are almost all completely identified. Most of them are unknown because there are no records unless it's one of the projects that was done in the last 15 years. And the customer side, we've got about 350 in. We've got about 350 to go. Sadly, the service line inventory the form did not get mailed out with the December bills. So as we have hit the street and started knocking on doors, some people have let us know that they were confused, so they ignored it. Others just said they threw it away. Others didn't see it, etc. So we are going door to door. We're knocking. If they're not there, we're leaving a service line inventory on their doorknob, on their door handle. We also got a handy dandy stamp, which I'll show you. I say this because we're sitting here brainstorming, like, how do we get people to understand in like fewer words? So, action required. So we thought we'll probably do another mailing for what I would call the center and the east side of town, because we're working on the west side of town right now, since we need to know what they have for service lines so that we can prioritize those lines that are most definitely needing to be replaced versus anything that's newer material. And like I said, I think I want to mail back out the east side because it's going to take probably another month and a half to get over there. And that way, if we happen to maybe get another 100, because this stamp on the actual outside of the envelope is like, inspiring to people, like action required. They just want to take action. Furthermore, there's a little QR code on the service line inventory now. So if you just like take your phone with your camera on and you snap that picture, it brings you right into a Google form, and everything that's on the form is in full color on your screen with little dots to fill in, like, this is this, this is this. You go over, you take a picture, you hit attach, and you're done. It takes like, I don't know, like minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I'm finding a lot of people don't realize that they have a water line coming into their basement, or where in the world it would actually be or what it might look like. So there's definitely, we're dealing with a different generation of people that don't truly understand where things come from, where their power comes from, where their water comes from, where their phone comes from. It's very physical. Water is very physical. It can't just appear there without an actual pipe conveying.
And it can't leave either.
They'll find out pretty quick when a pipe bursts.
Yeah. Have we previously done front porch forum postings about this?
So I just sent Valerie kind of towards the middle of December some great language, and then there was all kinds of craziness that happened and illnesses and everything else. And so that social media stuff just went out maybe like a week or so ago, which is great because we've gotten a little bit of response through that. And we're hitting the streets. And if it would stop having like, windstorms and rain events and hail, and it'd be just a tiny bit easier to get things done outside. Okay. But yeah, so the hope is to kind of just keep hammering it out so that before we get to like the beautiful days of spring, at least the west side, if not most of the service line inventory is done, given that it's due in October. And by the time it's spring and summer, we just get so crazy, crazy busy. Because that's when everything gets done, when the ground is not frozen. So that's kind of the goal, is to get it as much as possible through March, through like the end of March, and just be doing whatever the cleanup is of kind of the irregular, crazy, and it might be at the end that there's 10 or 20 houses where they are not gonna let us in, they are not gonna tell us, and we will just not know. That you
Okay.
can't make them let us.
Val, if you want to send me the front porch forum stuff, I can do that if you want a hand with that.
She's shaking her head.
Okay, that's great, Jill. Thank you for that update.
Steve, you're
Filling
muted.
out,
Steve, if you're talking, you're muted.
Jill, filling out that form on your phone would take them longer to walk down the basement stairs and find their
I
They're
told Valerie.
line
that,
coming in than it would be to fill it out, right?
I was pretty tempted to say, hey, hold on, let me show you that. Do you have your phone on you? And if they say yes, let me send you a quick link. Send it to them. They click on it. Let's do this together. But, instead I get the calls that are like, I'm home on Fridays. Come meet with me. It's like, man, you sound very capable. But okay, I'll come see you Friday. People aren't comfortable with what they're not comfortable with, so.
I was just mentioning too, how the two projects head together. So Jill's work, when they complete the service line inventory, our goal is to be able to work together on, which particular residences need to be replaced if there are galvanized lines, for instance. At that point, we will go out in the field and we'll do some additional surveying on each one of those properties. And we'll gain information, for instance, on where the water line enters the house, what might be in the way in terms of trees and retaining walls, flower beds, all sorts of things that might impact costs, and our ability to be able to replace that at each individual home. Assuming there's funding, obviously the goal is to be able to make that part of the project. So that's I was just kind of tying what she's working on into the plan side of Bristol West too. So
There's also lots of covered porches.
yeah, good point.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you both very much for all of that work that you're doing. It's a lot. It's a lot, and especially this time of year, it's not so great.
And I hear again, Pine Street with the medical center there and the industrial, with the bakery there. You had some challenges there, but I think they rose to them. And I think some of the other side streets will hopefully be a little better than Pine Street was, because Pine Street's a lot of traffic too.
I think West Street's going to be a real challenge.
So yeah, I was thinking more like Elm and Taylor and West Pleasant, Munsell.
No, we got from
The West North Street
Street
intersection is going to be a
Where's that, Steve?
the West Street North Street intersection is going to be interesting.
Yeah. Midnight to 6 a.m. maybe digging.
Yeah, it may be.
Okay, anything else on that topic, Valerie, on that item?
Other than I wanted to give you a quick spin through the draft capital improvement plan. But I'm wondering, looking at the time, if I think most of you have seen it in some form before. So let me ask if you're interested in seeing how it's shaping up right now.
As long as it's not gonna take us an hour.
Yeah, can you give us that?
Yeah, it won't take an hour. Let me quickly share with you where I'm at with it right now. So this is the updated capital improvement plan. I wasn't able to work with it at all last year, so had a little bit of catch up to do. And I have not had a chance to meet with department heads to fill in the specifics of the different planned projects. Let me go back to the top. It starts with the fire department, and we talked about the fire department's capital planning. So that's not reflected in this draft right now. And it was very helpful for me to hear the part about the balance, the different allocations for each of the reserve funds, because the numbers that I plugged in this spreadsheet apparently still included this year's appropriation. So I went through and I deducted that out so that we get a more realistic bottom line of going forward. I'm going to skip through fire department. I did meet with Eric briefly last week. So some of these numbers might need to be updated. This balance of the highway capital equipment includes the current balance minus this year's allocation of 135. So I didn't want to double count it. So
We're in
anyway,
the hole.
say that again.
You said we're in the hole?
Apparently, for now, but that reflects the John Deere loader purchase. So some of these might need to be corrected or updated.
The
But
numbers I gave you have this year's calculations in it, appropriations.
Say that again?
No, did you hear Sharon? Did you hear Sharon?
No.
What was that, Sharon?
The numbers I gave her the other day had all the appropriations in.
Right.
Including the approved in March of 2023.
Okay, yeah, so I wanted to be sure not to double count that, because the way this is set up,
Oh, you have an extra line.
yeah,
Okay.
it starts up at the top with the balance, and then it goes down to whatever the allocation is, and it comes out at the bottom. And these numbers here on each of the sections, here and here, they're all tied to this table down here. And that's here in this column are the balances that Sharon gave, but now I realize that those balances include all of these numbers. So I'll need to figure that out. But so if we make any adjustments in whatever allocations to those reserve funds, it'll automatically be reflected up above, up here. So we can kind of use that as a planning tool. What I think is helpful at the moment is looking, since we have a lot of capital road projects. So this is just looking ahead at what some of our needs might be based upon what we currently know. I don't have a good handle on the lower notch work that's planned, but we do know that we've got Basin Street coming along. We have the Lincoln Road Riverbank repair. And this column accounts for the grants we currently have. So we're going to be in the hole. If we're going to be relying on this fund to cover that expense, we're going to be quite in the hole. So this gives us an idea of what we need to be planning for our capital roads to keep up on top of things.
Only $1 million.
And I added a new line that wasn't there in years before about grants. So hopefully we can get grants to offset a lot of these things. Same thing with paving. We're in pretty good shape with the paving budgets and paving plan, I think. But again, I haven't caught up with Eric to update this and what the schedule might be going forward. Sidewalks is kind of exciting. We have a pretty good balance in the sidewalks fund. I'm in meeting with the bicycle ped committee recently. We agreed to go forward with putting a bid out, or an RFP out for Garfield Street. There are currently 2 sections of Garfield Street that are identified in the original sidewalk replacement plan. So at the moment I'm going with those, but I do want to walk it myself and measure it myself just to verify those lengths and the scope to put out to bid probably in the next week or 2. But we have a lot of other opportunities for sidewalk projects. I'd like to, well, here's the airport drive. We've submitted a grant application for $300,000. Well, actually the grant application, that's the total project cost. The grant would be $240,000 for airport drive sidewalk. And I'd also like to do a scoping study on West Street for a new sidewalk alignment all along West Street on the south side. So I want to budget for that. So we're in pretty good shape with the sidewalk fund for for those kinds of projects going forward. And also with the Basin Street project is complicated because it has a lot of different components. So I wasn't sure how to reflect that in this kind of structure because some of it's going to be sidewalks, some of it's going to be paving, some of it's going to be capital roads, and some of it's stormwater, and some of it's something else. So and grant funding and how to proportion those allocations. I haven't really sorted that out yet. And I don't know if it's how important it is to do that at this level, but just to know, have it on the radar, I think is helpful. Capital Buildings Fund. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Well, can I
Go ahead.
ask, what was your interest, the West Street South Side scoping study? Where was that sidewalk? Replace what we've got from the post office to basically the creamy stand, or?
Well, as folks know, that from Holly Hall, walking across the gas station and going all the way down to the creamy stand, it's kind of a zigzag, and some of the sidewalk is in pretty rough shape. Some of it doesn't drain very well. Some of it's 4 feet wide, some of it's not. I think this would be an opportunity to have a study done to realign it, to have it be a more unified alignment, widened. There are a lot of utilities and trees that would be affected. So this scoping study, similar to what was done on Munsell Avenue, would look at all of those kinds of constraints, drainage issues, and other kinds of impacts, and come up with a budget.
Okay.
And some good news. Some of you may already know that I had a very funny email exchange about a month ago with the owner of the property right next to the creamy stand, where there's the crosswalk to nowhere, and the sidewalk just ends by their property, but doesn't go across to the creamy stand. Well, I had an exchange with that property owner, and it turns out that property owner is completely in favor of having a sidewalk go across their property. I was all worried that they would not be in favor of it because there are some really nice trees in the front yard, or maybe they really liked all that green space, and maybe they felt a sidewalk would be an intrusion, but no, they would really welcome it. So that was great news.
Okay.
So going down capital buildings funds, we know we still have a lot of work to do with Holly Hall. The library needs quite a bit of work. I'm trying to get an RFP together to replace the front porch in a similar way that we did for Holly Hall with the composite materials. I'm just not sure how to adapt what we learned from the Holly Hall project scope to a scope of work for the library. So I'm trying to get that wrapped up. And then, of course, the library needs a lot of other work as well. And then I plugged in the Hewitt Road property purchase, as I mentioned earlier, just so you can see what it looks like if we go that route. And the fund is still in pretty good shape at the end of the day, if just looking at those particular projects. I don't know what we need for the Holly Hall roof repair, which we know is kind of an ongoing project. So there's still a lot of information that needs to be plugged in.
Did I understand from Meredith Saturday night said we lost some shingles, some slate?
We
So-
lost a bunch of the slate. It's on the ground.
For Holly Hall.
Wow. And then I have the lines up here about the public works needs analysis. Actually, we've been in the one on, it's still listed here for where we started on Pine Street, but we're now switching gears to the Hewitt Road analysis. And I'm estimating it might cost about $30,000 to hire an engineering company or a design company to do the site analysis, water, sewer, soils, what other kinds of things that we need to know in order to see if that site will accommodate a public works facility. So that I plugged that in here.
Val, have you heard from Act 250 yet?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not. So that's there. But again, this shows that that fund is still in pretty good shape with those things. I plugged in the Eagle Park fishing under the conservation fund, what I expect our balance will be at the end of the day. Here are the contributions, and then trying to get a handle on what other debt. I think this is current. This is somewhat current. I'm not aware of anything that needs to be added to that. But then down below, we have police and water and sewer. And those things need to be updated, I think. I haven't spent much time with that. So that's just a quick peek at where I'm at with the capital budget.
Okay. You want me to turn that back on?
No, I'm good now.
Warm me up a little bit.
I'm good now.
Alrighty, so we can move on to item number 3.
Sure.
Okay, so consider a new proposal for Pine Street improvements, including widening the paved road, stormwater drainage, striping, etc., and allocations of ARPA funding for implementation.
I do not have much to offer on this topic. Eric and Peeker had really, and Steve, really put a lot of thought into this. And on the tabletop is our two large plan sets that have segments of Pine Street with some notes on drainage, and show what Steve's team came up with for widening the paved area to result in ultimately an additional 4 feet of paved width that can be striped for pedestrian lane. I don't know that the entire 4 feet comes off of the south side. It might be a combination a little bit on each side, but you kind of rearrange the center line. So I would prefer that Peeker and Steve go in whatever info you have on that.
We just, we had a conversation at the start of the meeting before we were on, and, you know, all the talk we've had about taking care of Pine Street and getting sidewalks in there, and the more I think about it, the more nervous I get. If we widen that road 4 feet, we increase the speed of it. I really think that if we have more road, we're gonna have more speed problems than we have right now. And I think, you know, the way it is now, people go slow because if there's somebody walking in the road, they have to go around them. We give them another 4 feet and they're not gonna slow down. That's my concern, and maybe it's ill-founded, but that's what I'm thinking.
I guess I have a question on that also, was if we added 4 feet to the road and then we add a stripe, are we really gonna are we gonna have to have a stripe on both sides of the road? Or just one side? And I was always taught you're gonna walk in the road, you always walk facing traffic coming at you. So if it's only the stripes on one side, somebody walking east is gonna have their back to traffic. If it's on the south side, if it's on the north side, somebody's gonna have their back to the traffic walking west.
Or they're gonna just walk in the road, which
Or
is
they're gonna
what I
walk
would
in the
do.
road, or walk in the road, correct. That's a question I have. If we're widening it by 4 feet, we put a 4-foot stripe in, are we putting 2 4-foot stripes, one on each side, so you
Or
walk?
two 2-foot stripes.
Or two 2-foot stripes, I don't know.
I mean, the pictures look like there's only one.
Yeah.
I mean, the speed data that we have from the Regional Planning Commission, when that was done a few years ago, demonstrated on Pine Street that speed wasn't an issue. And it was a contender to have the speed limit lowered to 25 because the majority of the speed on that street was lower than the posted 30. Sometimes it was 25, sometimes it was 23, at least from the data collected for that study. Other streets, like Liberty, showed traffic was traveling much faster, and and then at the state level, it's not encouraged to just change your speed limit. You need to adapt the road, and making the road less wide is one of those speed reduction tactics that you can do. I agree with Peeker. I think if you widen the road, you do run the risk of changing how traffic behaves on that road, and could potentially lead to higher speeds down that road. If it's just a striped area, I could see the potential for traffic to be traveling in the striped area if people aren't walking there, you know, bigger trucks maybe, things like that. I think the only way that you could slow down or keep traffic at the speeds at which they seem to be going now, judging by our speed data, and we can obviously collect more if we have to, would be to actually put a full sidewalk in. But we also know that the cost of that seemed to be prohibitive, and that was many years ago. So yeah, I'm not in favor of widening. I'd be very concerned about increasing speeds on that road, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do.
I mean, we could always leave it the way it is now, because I've heard people say they're not going on Pine Street because it's so rough.
We just don't pave it ever, which would annoy the residents of Pine Street, but boy, traffic's gonna be slow.
Well, that, you make an interesting point that after it's paved, it's gonna be all that much easier to zip right along. You won't have all the natural speed bumps.
I mean, speed, if we're concerned about speed, which, as I said, the speed data, which is just it's a month or whatever, I can't remember the exact date it was collected. It's just, a certain amount of time that was collected, but it's trying to get a good estimate. The speed wasn't the issue, but I know that there is a lot of concern because it does get a lot of pedestrian access. There was talk about the stop signs, which I do think help. In my mind, that seems to, if people are concerned about speeding, that it just allows cars to slow down, in key areas. And it was just sort of the pedestrian safety aspect. I think Joel is right. If it's on one side, you run the risk of someone's back being to traffic, which I don't think is a good idea.
And living there for 37 years, it's about equal, 50-50. People walking east, they walk on the north side of the road. If they're walking west, they're on the south side of the road. It's not why almost all the people are headed east, so we put it on the east side or the north side of the road, put the stripe.
The only experience I have with the proposed plan is that when you go to Williston, there's that bike lane that's in that, like 6 lanes of traffic or whatever the heck it is up there, which just seems frightening to me to ride a bike on anyway. I don't go all that often, but I have not seen cars driving in that. It's green striped, it's very bright. I have not seen traffic, and that's a lot of traffic in that, moving into that lane. I don't know if we would experience that here in Bristol. That's the only example I can think of.
There's more space up there.
That's
I mean,
true.
the only problem with the one up there is like the green space goes this way. If there's a turn only lane,
There's a
it
lane,
goes through that. that always scares me
I
because
think-
you're
Yeah.
not paying
it's
attention.
you could have cars going by a bicycle, it's going
Right, on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Both
or
sides.
cutting the bicycle off
Yeah.
if they don't see.
Yeah.
it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
think it's frightening. I could never
Mhm.
bring myself to do that. But I was trying to think of where have I seen it
Dude,
used.
Shelburne Road is the same way.
Is Shelburne Road the
down
same
by
way?
the state, down by the women's prison on School Street, it's
Yeah.
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I've seen that going to Rice.
So now that you've heard us, Steve, your thoughts?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do the story piece.
This is really something you guys need to hash through. I mean, there's 100 ways to skin a cat. We were just trying to come up, Eric and I sat down and we were just trying to come up with a concept. This isn't an engineering drawing, it's just a concept. To say, hey, is this something you guys would want to entertain? I was a public works director in Winooski for about 10 years. I went through a lot of traffic calming stuff in urban areas. There are a whole bunch of different ways to deal with that stuff. I can tell you, and you're absolutely right about narrow streets. I can tell you in the areas where we, for instance, even painted a center line just to give the drivers the perception that it was narrower made a difference. We put up, in certain areas, we had some speed tables, which half the people like, half the people don't. One of the best things that I thought we did was to put up some of the flashing speed limit signs on the side of the road. It's amazing how much people actually pay attention to that. I don't know, you're speed limit on Pine 25 miles an hour?
No, it's 30.
It's 30 now, but we were looking at 25 for the entire former village area.
Which makes sense. And I, chiming in a little bit too on what Joel mentioned about perceptions of people walking. I got a chance this summer to really see how many folks use that street. It's amazing to me. How many, not just pedestrians, but bikers, everything you can imagine, a lot of dog walkers. I mean, I can really see the need for some type of pedestrian facilities up there. I mean, it's significant. More so than I ever would have thought before we started that project. I don't know if anybody's ever done a pedestrian count, but it's, especially when school's in, there are a lot of kids that use that, a ton.
Yeah.
So anyway, just my my 2 cents. But we, Eric and I were just bouncing around different ideas for how we achieve this without having to physically put in a sidewalk, because the costs for a sidewalk aren't just capital costs. There's also maintenance costs. Eric has a ton of issues in terms of snow removal. You've got narrow areas of that street. Get up toward Joel's place, there's certain places that are, difficult, especially around, for instance, Bristol Bakery. You just don't have a ton of area between the edge of the current road and, the facilities that are there. So we were just
Yeah,
trying to come up with
repaving
some ideas
sidewalk
for you and bounce them around. So I would suggest, and I don't know, Eric is going to talk about repaving, I suppose, at some point. He and I have talked a lot about, the repairs that were done. One of the problems with Pine Street in terms of the asphalt, it's gone so far. You were going to get a lot of mirroring through that, I think, if you simply overlay it and put an 1.5-inch overlay over it. It'll be good for a year, but I think you're going to see a lot of the underlying issues like the alligator cracks, right? And all the other things that, the repairs that we did because of the water line looks like a giant scar all the way down the middle of the street right now, right? A lot of that's going to come through. I think this is just my opinion. I think you're going to be disappointed if you put a bunch of money at repaving without addressing a more fundamental repair to that street in terms of the asphalt.
In other words, grinding it down.
That's what I would do. Yeah, I would. You've got in a lot of places in there, we found there was 8 or 10 inches of asphalt. I mean, it's been overlaid and overlaid and overlaid.
That would also be an opportunity to kind of shift some of the sloping to deal with some of the drainage.
Yeah, in overlaying, grinding, and exactly what you're talking about, right? You'll bring in a commercial grinder, they'll grind that material, and it makes a great base for asphalt. It really does.
People in the north won't be happy with the change of the slope.
So in terms of our replacement plan, or not replacement plan, but our asphalting of that area, are we just going to cover it, or did we plan on grinding it? Is that a new thing that we need to look at, Val?
The quote that we received was only for an overlay and not for grinding. And I don't recall the estimate that Eric offered for what it would be for grinding, but maybe Steve, with your experience, you have some sense.
I don't remember. I know Eric had looked at it and he told me he'd gotten a cost for that, or he came up with a cost.
I could be completely wrong, but somehow like $12,000 or $15,000 comes to mind. I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Like
It sounds cheap.
You guys could spend a whole, half an hour talking about that, I suppose.
Right.
That
Valerie,
really is something
could
Eric
that-
should be here for, but
Because we were well under, I think Steve's estimate was almost $118,000 under what we bonded for. Could some of that be used out of the water to grind that street? Because it was part of the, I won't say problem, but,
Yeah, but the paving was gonna be town.
no, paving was gonna be town, but grinding it out of the water.
Isn't that part of the town? Isn't
I
that
don't
part of
think the
paving?
funding agencies would support that.
Given that it wasn't the original scope.
No, they put back what they took out.
Yeah, they
Right.
did,
They're,
Right.
Okay.
or at least grind what they took out,
Mhm.
or put back,
Right.
take it back out.
A good question.
was your question whether it could come out of the project as an eligible expense, or whether it could come
Yes,
out of the water
yes.
department as okay.
As an eligible expense.
Yeah, we pushed the eligible expense line item for pavement as about as far as I could push it.
Yeah.
We did a few favors for Eric on top of it, so.
Bruce, what are your thoughts as far as widening versus not?
He's left.
He hasn't gone anywhere. He's there.
I agree with you. I think if you widen it, you take the chance of increasing speed.
I mean, Bruce, you had that in 22 all summer, the 5 months at my house, that speed cart. I don't remember what what the average was, or what. I know speed carts. I've had people tell me on North Street and on West Street and now on East Street, they make a difference. Your brother-in-law's
Yeah.
told me, you hear the brake lights come on, you see the brake lights come on, it makes a difference. So speed things do.
Yeah. I think when we had the cart on Pine Street in the 85th percentile, it was like 28 miles an hour. But we had it out there longer than,
Yeah.
you
had good electricity there, so you just kept it there. Didn't have to
Yes.
recharge it.
That's why I left it there. There was electricity at your place.
Yeah.
So this is a
Yeah, I can
two-part
get something
agenda
out of
item.
Joel, I'm gonna, huh?
Oh, I told him, put it right there.
Yeah.
So this is a two-part agenda item. There's the widening for pedestrian access, but also the stormwater drainage and installation of devices to help manage the stormwater, dry wells and some culverts and piping. I did not have a cost estimate for that, but Eric mentioned that he and Peker talked about that, so there might be more info available.
Yeah, I think he was around $30,000 for materials.
And then there's the contractor cost.
Yeah,
You're gonna spend 150,000, aren't you?
yeah, well, that's what we were figuring. We figured probably around 100,000 and then the paving, 30, yeah, hang on a second. Let me get he sent me the.
40,000 was for, that's infrastructure was 40,000.
Total materials, 34,442. We figured 100,000 for, site work. And $3,600 worth of base is $17,000 worth of paving. Now, I don't know if the paving was for the whole thing or just for paving what we were.
But if we do it before we pave the whole thing,
No, this is
down in Jackman.
down to Jackman's, fixing what we,
Mhm.
but I don't know that I'm not 100% sure what those two paving numbers are. Maybe the 17,000 was the extra 4 foot down the side of Pine Street. Does that sound right, Steve?
I didn't work with Eric on a cost estimate for that, so he did, I think, work one up, I'm not sure. $17,000 isn't much asphalt though, you know, it's $80 a ton now.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
And Steve, was that, speaking, or Peker, either one chime in here, was that just doing from about, I call it the crest of Pine Street, it's about where Mountain Health's driveway is, headed east, it crowns, you were gonna take all of North Street and Mountain Health's area and put it kind of in the middle towards Jackman Drive somewhere.
I think he was only looking at 3, 1, 2.
And then what was gonna be west of Mountain Health's, that end of town, that end of Pine Street,
I don't
towards,
think nothing as far as what he had figured.
nothing.
Wasn't it only one area that you had the concerns
It
with?
was a concern from Taylor to,
Taylor, Maple to Taylor to North Street. I know, Steve, you and I talked last summer, was try to get this pavement, so because all of North Street runs right down to Jackman Drives.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and generally speaking, the road today slopes from south to north, you know? You've got some areas that don't, but I think what Eric and I were talking about, if you regrind that, I think a lot of the changes have to do with the overlays. I think in the old days, that's exactly probably what used to happen. And a lot of the overlays have probably changed that to some degree, but I think that's a viable plan for you, and it would deal with a lot of the stormwater, especially at the intersections, with the exception of, gosh, what's the first one?
I thought there was some talk, Peker, of between Mountain Health Drive headed west to Liberty is to put one of those plastic tubes in the ground to hold the water. So it's,
that's what's already in at Mountain Health.
Right.
oh, west of Mountain Health, while along.
No, at Mountain Health, their drains for
Right,
their
drains their
parking lot.
parking lot, but I was thinking the runoff from the roof that is
I
down.
don't think he's got any plans for anything down on
You
that
get all
end.
that water that comes down Munsell Avenue, down the Kimball driveway, down Justin Jackman's old place, down through there.
This was just for the,
Maple to North Street, on Pine Street, all the
I
water.
don't
from-
even know if it was Maple. I
Well,
think
like-
it's Taylor.
More of a sloping
I'm
of the
telling you
street.
where he got this number from Taylor.
Well, I realize that,
Jackman
but
Drive.
the water comes from Maple.
It could.
I mean, the road the water's gonna run down towards Taylor from Maple, which it does now.
I think that's what Steve was saying. You regrade the road so it runs where you want it to.
Yep, exactly. We put some general drainage arrows on the map, and, you know, I know Eric had a couple of comments, but generally speaking, the concept was to slope everything from south to north. And that's really what the majority of it does today.
Yeah, I don't think he was looking at dealing with any sort of drainage unless it was surface drainage.
Yep.
With the exception of, Taylor Avenue to Jackman's. One on each side of Jackman's, and I don't know if he had one at Taylor, or if he was surface draining that to Taylor. What I met with him on was going down across, Jackman's and how we would get there.
But I think one each side of Jackman Drive was, the one east of Jackman Drive was gonna take all the water coming from North Street. That street kinda lays towards the west.
So it doesn't run down his driveway.
Right,
Yeah.
correct.
And the one on the other side was gonna take everything coming from the west, so it didn't run.
Right, right. That's what I meant, it was coming from Maple Street, really, Maple and Taylor.
I think Peter, he had talked about one on the corner of Liberty as well. I don't know if that was in the estimate. I have no idea. I haven't seen the estimate, so I don't know what.
There's one there that works poor to nothing.
Yeah, I think he was gonna replace that. That was the
It was a dry well in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Steve, I really don't know, because we didn't talk any more than when I met with him, we walked Jackman's to see what we thought we needed to do there, and to see what Tim's thoughts were.
Right.
So other than that, that's, until Eric's here, I can't tell you any more than that.
So it sounds like we'll need to table this and take it up another time.
Was that, this whole thing thought to be done in 24? So they
Well,
could
the
table-
idea, if there was support for doing any of this, would be to do it before Pine Street is paved. And then the
Right.
next,
While you were in the bathroom, we talked about not paving Pine Street, because it really slowed the traffic down, so.
Yeah, built-in speed bumps that
Yeah.
have there now.
but this also dovetails with the next, or one of the next agenda items about the use of ARPA funding, and whether ARPA funding, whether select board would want to allocate ARPA funding to cover some of these expenses. That doesn't need to be made tonight. We don't need to decide that. It's partly the timing, because we're budget cycle, budget mode, but also we need to have a fairly good handle of how we want to handle Pine Street going forward this coming fiscal year, and what's included in the overall project, so that we know what we're buying and how we're paying for it.
Yeah, as far as using ARPA funding there, if we don't incorporate something for the pedestrians, I don't feel that it's something that benefits the town as much as another place we could spend the money. And that was our goal, I thought, was to spend it where
Most effective.
It was number 8 on in their list of 20. So it was quite high, but I think there's still.
But not drainage, it was more pedestrian.
More pedestrian.
Oh,
Eight
yes,
was
no.
pedestrian only.
The ARPA one was redesign Pine Street to create safe pedestrian pathway. That was that requirement. So yeah, the drainage on that wouldn't be included for that.
And I don't think it, in my mind, it doesn't affect enough people to
Correct.
make it worthy.
I agree, even though I live on the street, I agree.
Yeah, the widening and then the putting in of, one side or perhaps both sides, I could see that, because that affects the pedestrians. And I will say, I think, going back to the widening just quickly, yes, we're widening, but I think if we could have it where it's definitively striped, we may not have an issue like how you described the ones in Williston where they're green striped. But again, you don't know until you do it. And then we're paying for striping each year. And if it's extensive striping as opposed to just a line, which it would have to be, I think, to prevent people from drifting over. But, as Steve said, he feels, looking at that project for a number of months, something needs to be done. But I don't think we're there yet, unfortunately. There seem to be too many variables and too many options for us to sort of narrow down what might work there.
Do we take what we have right now, the pavement, whether it's new or not, and maybe in the spring stripe it with our own striper, just to see if that narrow, go back to the, if that's people walking it, and then they're gonna drive over the stripe when no one's walking it.
Right,
But it defines where the people go to walk.
right.
A striped line between here and the edge of the grass.
Are you gonna do just the outside edge, or are you gonna put a center line?
No center line, but narrow it up so
Yeah.
it's,
Cause if you put a center line, you're
You're then
Pushing
pushing,
out.
Squeezing.
you're right.
pushing
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's the striping of that would be the least expensive as a starter point to see
on the present
what-
width we have
what-
now.
what people would do with that kind of thing and how that affects traffic and how many people, I mean, I think as a pedestrian walking that, I think if you had lines that you knew that you could step either side of, I think that would give you more, at least you would feel safer. Right now, it's completely open, and so you hope people are adjusting as the cars come down. So yes, I
Well,
think
Are you
What's gonna-
thinking 2 feet on each side? 2 or 3 feet? on
something like that with the, what we have there now is the road.
I hate to be this way, but I don't see people walking on the shoulder side of that line,
Interesting.
you know? I really don't.
Yeah.
Watching them walk there now, I mean, they walk right down the middle of the road until somebody comes, and I really don't see that changing.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to be that way, but I don't.
I don't honestly don't see a lot of people, they walk by my house, I don't see a lot of them walking down the middle of the road.
Well, they're
No, but
not,
they
they're
don't-
not
they don't-
on
they
2
wouldn't.
feet on the edge.
No, they're not. There's 3 of them walking with their dog, they've got 3 abreast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Usually-
it-
they're
and it's
usually- I would
abreast.
say they're in the center of the road, but they're like, if you had to divide the road, they're in the center of that, like
Half.
eastbound lane or
Right.
westbound.
Okay, I'll
lane.
give you that, yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't, I don't, if we put a line there and there's 2 foot on the outside of that line, I just don't see people
Yeah.
walking there. I'm just
Do you
trying
think
to,
it was marked in some way? You don't think it, like if it had little walking people, or, I'm just trying to think.
Yeah.
I just don't think you're gonna change the habit of them walking 3 abreast down that road. And, you know, and everybody that travels that road on a regular basis knows that people walk down it.
Yeah.
I don't wanna if you have a 2-foot lane, and somebody says, well, I'm driving my car and I'm not over into that 2 foot, but I'm right on that white line or just barely off that white line, you could make it even dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
I know, when you start to put those visual things
Define
and
where you
defining,
gotta-
and you're restricting, and then it changes, yeah.
Hey,
I
that's
mean, we
fine.
also have, now that we're talking about a public works facility potentially in a new location, that also changes a lot of the traffic that happens on that road. Which could greatly benefit that road in terms of speed reduction, in terms of the size of vehicles that travel on that road daily. So even just that change,
Maybe, I mean, yeah, you're trying town trucks, right, but you're still gonna have large trucks.
Still got a lot.
Yeah.
sure,
everything
but
going
it's
to
not
stores.
town trucks, and it's also if it changes traffic on a Saturday, depending on what happens with trash and things like that, that could change
Eric will
potentially.
say, leave them
Yeah,
there.
he will.
He's gonna say, don't
Right.
you put them down there.
But I mean, potentially that could
Yeah.
change, and so that reduces that traffic, so that could completely change the traffic on that road, to be more beneficial to pedestrians and cyclists. Yeah.
I
Okay,
just,
sorry.
I'm just,
Yeah, no, I know.
you know, we got a committee to study this. They came up with recommendations, but, you know, the recommendations are,
More onerous than.
yeah, and a lot of people express concerns with those, and are we,
I don't think we've hit on the perfect solution yet.
are we,
No,
are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't
Well,
exist on
yes.
that road?
yes. I think for some people it does exist, because they've seen people drive fast down that street, and there definitely are people who do that, but according to the data that has been collected, that's not the majority of people, it's a very slim minority of people. But the idea is obviously to make that,
I
make
do-
it safe as possible in all our streets that don't have sidewalks.
And I do believe if you widen it, they will go fast.
Yes,
Or at least do 30,
Yeah.
for sure, 30, 35.
And even streets that have sidewalks on both sides,
They sometimes
People
will
they
walk.
still walk in the road with their
So-
dogs.
right.
Yeah, well, today, but I
Oh,
was
yeah.
out walking my
No,
dog today,
but,
and there were
you
people
know,
walking in the road.
To me, you have the option,
Yeah.
you should walk in the sidewalk, I agree. And some of them do walk in the road anyway.
Sometimes they do that because the sidewalks aren't that safe.
I was just gonna say, it was icy today.
When it's icy,
I
and
picked,
snow covered.
I'm pretty,
That's a
the
whole
last thing I
nother
wanna do is fall on my new knee, so I'm pretty conscious of where I place my feet these days.
Kind of interesting that when we did the Munsell Avenue new sidewalks scoping study a couple years ago, a lot of the, well, not, maybe not a lot, but a fair amount of public feedback was, why do we need a sidewalk on Munsell Avenue? People don't mind walking in the road. Do something with Pine Street instead. Pine Street's a higher priority. That was a lot of the feedback we got.
That's true. That's true.
Okay,
All right, so that's the time we have allotted for that discussion.
Yeah.
And again, I just don't think we've hit on the perfect fix yet.
So shall I expect that we'll continue the conversation about the drainage at some point? And then,
Yes.
Yeah, when
yeah, I think we
Eric's
need,
on,
we need Eric involved.
Yeah, the drainage we need to, well,
make a
we need to
decision.
deal with the drainage.
Right.
And I don't wanna see us spend, could be up to $60,000-$70,000 to pave that whole street. And then say, oh, in 25, we're gonna put new drainage in.
Right.
Cause that street gets paved now, another 15 or 20 years.
You
before it
won't live to see it be paved again.
None of us will. No, it's been paved once in 37 years I've been living there, so.
Okay.
okay,
All right, so moving on, number 4, consider
Thank you, Steve.
selection.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Steve.
Consider selection of consultant team for the Bristol Accessible Recreation Town Parks Project and allocation of ARPA funds for it.
as I mentioned in my notes, we received 6 very good proposals in response to our RFP. And we need a little bit more time to review them and rank them and come back with a proposal. But for the purposes of, if in fact the select board is interested in making any ARPA allocations tonight, we would have recommended allocating up to $52,000 of ARPA funds for this, and then we'll come back later with a recommendation for a consultant.
What's the $53,000 for them to create a plan?
A plan for 3 different parks, and the scope is to come up to ultimately, well, in addition to public outreach and engagement, come up with the end product of construction plans that we can put out to bid, so that if and when grant funding becomes available, we will have a shovel-ready project that'll make it more competitive.
What construction would we be doing at the parks?
Yeah.
Making them accessible, handicap
It's
accessible,
just for
wheelchair,
handicap accessible,
well,
not
handicap,
other-
wheelchair,
Okay.
walkers.
Yeah, it might
people
have something to do with the surface material or removing certain barriers or adjustments in slope and some other things, or maybe some of the addition of certain rails in certain locations, that kind of thing. I don't really know. To be honest with you, I have not spent much time with the individual proposals yet.
Have we had a lot of people beating our door down, saying, hey, I can't use your parks because I'm in a wheelchair or I'm in a walker?
I don't think you're ever gonna get
Or
that.
maybe we
kind of
won't ever
feedback.
get them, I don't know, but.
I don't think you're
I
ever
mean,
gonna
we've
get
got our
something.
fishing platform that's that, and
Yeah, but accessibility to that isn't always that great either.
Well, Porter made a presentation to the select board earlier this
Right.
year about this initiative. And I believe the select board supported it at the time, which is why I put the time and effort in to put the RFP out and get it to this point. So
Also, our town, the park on the playground on the green, when we
When did we
put that
just
in,
lose
that became handicap accessible as
That
well.
was good.
I mean,
What
there's-
did you do, Ian?
Is it not
I didn't
plugged
do
in?
anything.
Oh, it's plugged in, there's green light showing on the back.
It's the power.
It's still got power because it's still lit up. Can you guys hear us?
yeah, I can hear you. Now you're frozen.
Can you see us?
Yeah, I can see you and hear you.
you're
Yeah.
gone, we got a black screen now.
Maybe
it's
it's-
maybe it's just the TV.
Is this the TV? Did it just go off?
Well, I see Porter's online. Maybe she wants to offer some thoughts.
Got nothing,
I
huh?
see
Go
the
ahead,
red.
Porter, we can't see you, so.
See the red right there.
I don't particularly have anything to add, but, as Valerie said, that this RFP is the result of the conversation that was had last fall about moving forward with exploring what it would look like to make these parks more welcoming to people with different mobilities. And the idea was there was ARPA money available and that
greater access and accessibility at town parks was one of the ARPA things that came up during those discussions. And so that's where we are now, is to look at our fees.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, thanks, Porter.
Thanks, Porter.
So, the way I came up with that $52,000 figure was I just took a quick glance at the cost proposals among those that were submitted without paying attention to whose was what. And that was the highest end, but there were other lower ones. And the objective of this process is to rank and evaluate the technical proposals first, kind of determine the quality, the level of quality that you're striving for, and then you rank it by the cost proposals, because sometimes the lowest cost is not the best option. And sometimes it's worth going with a higher cost if you're going to get a better product out of it.
Yeah. We've lost something. The laptop that we're running on, the screen just went off, and we've lost our big screen as well. The Zoom is still running, I assume.
Yeah,
It's
it
still
is.
running.
It's gotta be, or we wouldn't be talking
We
to
wouldn't be talking about it.
Right.
Yep.
But Val's frozen now.
I can
What's going
see
on?
you guys fine through the.
Oh, there you are, you're back. Yeah, we can't see though, so we've lost, and I worry that if I shut down the computer, it might kick you to the host, Val, perhaps. What to do?
Do we have anything else that we have to have visual on?
Oh, hang on, we're back.
No,
What was that?
We just.
That was
back
really
in.
weird. Okay then.
Interesting.
It
Okay,
just reappeared magically. Well, maybe we need to get a new computer.
nobody touch anything.
No.
Nobody touched anything.
That was very strange. All right, we'll
That
have
was
to look into that. Okay.
Okay.
So you've allocated approximately 53,000 after reviewing.
correct.
6 proposals. And this was number, in the ARPA list, this was number 15, funding for engineering studies to explore creating handicap accessible trails on town parks, Eagle, Memorial, Coffin, and Sycamore.
Coffin.
Down at
Oh,
South Side.
Coffin.
This
Okay.
didn't include Coffin.
Right.
Right.
And initially, we didn't have a number for it. I think we plugged in 10,000, or maybe that was myself who did that when we initially put in numbers for this. And then in terms of accessible, the RFP, Sharon, it says navigatable, can't say that word, to be able to be navigated by wheelchair, walker, stroller, or person walking with a cane, which a number of those parks don't have any ability to do that.
Would part of this study, Valerie, I think I could get behind it if part of this study would give us, you said it's gonna take those proposals and say, okay, Sycamore's gonna look like this and Eagle Park's gonna look like that. Give us a cost estimate for maintenance down the road, because that's gonna have to be applied somewhere.
Oh, sure. I would expect.
Right now, we put, I hate to say it, but we don't put a lot of money into our parks for maintenance, other things. I mean, we've rebuilt Eagle Park about 4 times, the fishing platform, 3 times, I think. And, but, I mean, that's a number I wanna know before I approve a budget, because if it's gonna say, Eric says I'm gonna need $50,000 more, my budget, to maintain the parks.
We can include that as part of the scope. I mean, I don't think it was specifically called out in the RFP, but I think it's reasonable to include that going forward with whoever, if we go forward, with whoever we hire, and going through that whole process. And it's a pretty typical element to include.
I mean, cause I remember when Porter gave that, presentation that night, Eric sat in the back room and said how much that's gonna cost for maintenance down the road.
I think it'll depend on if you keep that park open in the winter or not too. That would
Right.
play a big difference. If we were expecting to have paths plowed all winter, that's one thing, but I don't know that we would. I
We
mean,
don't
right now,
specifically close the parks though.
we don't, but then we also don't plow down by the, some of the entrances
Sycamore, we don't know.
either, so I'm just thinking of,
What would be an expense to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then most of that expense would probably be borne, it would be labor that would be an expense to him. Most of it would be borne through I think that's under the rec department, isn't it?
I
But
think so.
taking this past week's storms with a blowdown. we'd have trees to clean up in all these parks and, I
We
noticed.
probably still
Well,
do.
I was
Probably
just
still
gonna say
do.
we probably
We probably
do.
will
We'll know in the
still,
spring when we
Porter
get
had
in
something
there.
on Front Porch Forum the other night about, throwing the twigs and stuff off the trail network, but don't cut any trees and respect that of the landowners. He or she has to notify the landowner, said, hey, we have a tree falling across the trail, do you mind if we cut it? Or,
So we've expended the time we were gonna talk about this as well.
Yeah, so I guess my question on this is if we're not spending other
Taxpayer money.
other ARPA money right at the moment, do we need to earmark this money tonight, or can we get a better feel from the recommendation for who we're gonna go with?
Yeah.
So we have
I'm
an
happy-
exact
I'm happy to
number.
wait.
I mean, I don't,
Well, and she has-
unless Valerie, you think we're gonna spend all the money on item 5, but I don't think we're ready to do that.
No. And I don't see a problem with making the decision when we have an actual proposal.
Okay.
I would prefer that.
okay,
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Okay. Moving on to number 5, review status of ARPA funding and other potential allocations.
I think we can probably table this too, since we've tabled the Pine Street and this topic. I don't really have anything else in the wings.
I have one, so I can give an update. So we have, so far we've spent or we've allocated 815,065 for various projects. Some of those include the grant writing position, Turning Point Center, the skate park renovations, the rescue squad equipment upgrades, the elevator in the Masonic Hall, Wren's Nest support, the Willowell Foundation, bus for the Recreation Department, upgraded sound system for use by the town and 4th of July committee, open door clinic, and the mental health and social worker position.
You got kind of nervous there.
Well, it's because it was flashing. I thought, the laptop's going again. So that's where those funds have gone. Out of our 1.1 million, we've got about 333,000 left.
She's got 279.
Where's your 279?
Oh, she's got
Parking
53
sign out,
for
she already
the-
took that.
Yeah.
53 for the accessible, so it's 330.
So that's what we're looking at. Looking at that, because we're trying to go through the list that was presented to us by the ARPA committee and where those fall, and we're obviously trying to hit higher number items that were prioritized for us. Looking at that list, number 4 was air conditioning and heat pumps for Holly Hall, and that's something that we sort of need to have more exploratory work done to see if that's actually even feasible. We are having the resilience and the MERP, is that right? Yeah. MERP studies have been done, and that'll reveal information to us about how well both Holly Hall, the library, and Howden Hall fared in terms of those readings that were taken.
When do we expect those?
I don't know. We'd have to reach out to the Energy Committee. Maybe Richard Butts would know a little bit more about that. But yeah, number 4 was air conditioning. 5 we did, which was the skate park. 6 was the farmer's market, which I actually like to give a plug for. So farmer's market was going to be had been started by Bristol Core last year. The town allocated $1,000 for
3
that.
years in a row.
Well, it was $1,000 last year, and that was supporting the grant that Bristol Core had written, which was a bigger grant to support a few things, including the farmers market. There was then discussion about whether the town would use ARPA funds for the next 3 years, $10,000 each year. I'd like to bring that discussion back to the table to see if how the board feels about that. I think the farmers market was a really good success last year. And I know that CORE had planned and budgeted. Transparency, I'm on the board and I'm the treasurer. We had budgeted that to have the farmers market for this year. So I'd like to put that, and I don't know if it's tonight or if we put it on the agenda as a separate item, but it would be nice if the board is still wanting to support the farmers market, whether we'd be able to get that allocation.
What does the
What is-
10,000 go
yeah.
for? I mean, what do you have to pay?
Just in terms of running, we pay various people, certain vendors that came in, and then support for musicians. Musicians were a large part of that as well. and also to pay a chunk of it, I can't remember what percentage is, goes for someone to actually manage the farmer's market, because it's much more than what the executive director position can handle.
No,
So that's what that was
I
for.
can see that part of it. I
Yeah.
just, that $10,000 is a lot of money to have
farmer's
people
market
come in
for-
to be able to sell. Do they
Right.
pay for a space?
They do, and that was part of being able to use the 10,000 for the 3 years to establish. After last year, the idea was that hopefully you would build enough capital in to be able to have it to be self-sustaining after that fact. But we have a budget breakdown.
I was gonna say that might be helpful,
Sure.
some sort of
Yeah.
spreadsheet that tells us where.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe I'd put it on the agenda for another time when we
Yeah,
have
right.
this look
Yeah,
at the agenda.
Cora started to look at it now, but it's obviously the money isn't needed immediately, but it would be nice. We budgeted that in. So farmers market, one of the big things that, again, we're still looking at is the outdoor meeting in the classroom space at Lawrence Memorial Library. Not a lot of movement on that just because of physical things.
Limitations.
Limitations mainly to do with the septic system and the land that's there. So a bunch of different things happening. I don't know, Val, if you have anything else to add to that.
For that particular project?
No, sorry, just for the ARPA in general.
Well, as I've mentioned before, and I did in my notes, I think, given all the capital projects, I think, whatever balance we have, really should go into the capital roads fund. That's my recommendation.
The balance of the ARPA funds.
Correct.
Yeah.
The ultimate
That
final
affects the
balance.
most, because if it doesn't go there, it's gonna be spent somewhere else, and the capital needs for the roads are still gonna be there, and everybody's gotta pay that in March or September, when they pay their taxes, September and
You
April.
don't even know when you pay your taxes.
Well, I do.
Gee,
November.
must be
November.
Star pays them.
We get the bill in September, and
Well, for example, we have over $300,000 gap on Lincoln Road, just that one project. And that serves a lot of people. So that's just one thought.
Porter's smiling and unmuted. She's got something to say.
Porter.
I think the ARPA committee would be willing to consider, if there's money left over after these goals are met, but I feel like it's premature because the ARPA money was, I know that it's all in the, Bristol's account now, but we were following the guidelines that it needed to be committed by the end of 2024 and expended by the end of 2026. So I feel like you guys have done a terrific job so far on really methodically moving through the list and doing, the things that you could. And there's a couple ones which are a little more sticky. And I would really like to encourage the select board to just sit tight on this remaining couple $100,000 and work on the sticky projects to try to spend the money in the way that the ARPA money was recommended to be spent and that the ARPA committee worked really hard to recommend that it be spent, which is in as much as possible ways that will have a long lasting effect for the future of the town, not things that are ephemeral or that are going to be an ongoing part of the budget as much as possible. Things that would serve the broadest number of people or the broadest range of demographics, and things that might leverage additional resources to the community. So if there's money left over and you've done everything you could possibly do to fund the projects that were on at least this list of 20, committee was hoping you would move on to the later projects in the next 20, which were all also still supported by a lot of community members, rather than just put it into the coffers. But at the very least, if we could wait until you've made as much progress as you can, because I know we're still waiting on some of the EV charger stuff and the bus shelters, and the library one, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff still out there. So if you could hold off, I would really love to see that. And if not, I would hope that the ARPA committee would have an opportunity to weigh in. So, I try to come to these meetings, but not everybody does. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Porter.
So, do we wanna,
Oh, we're not looking at allocating any money tonight. I don't-
okay,
No, I just wanted to give an overview.
No, that's,
okay,
so we know where we are.
Yeah.
all right. Yeah. Are we ready for select board roundtable?
Yes.
Okay, Ian,
I'm good, thanks.
Michelle,
Val, if you wanna send me the email contact for Rick State to deal with the lights on the damn bridges, because
Yes.
there's only 2 lights left on the south bridge.
Yeah,
I mean, I've emailed them a couple times, I just can't find the email address, so I'll email them.
that's crazy.
But it's like, really, you guys wanted the lights?
Yeah, well, they,
Fix 'em.
like I told you, the commissioner, when I worked with him one day doing culverts, that was their thing, they were gonna go out and work with all the crews, and I got to work with them, in Cornwall, putting in a culvert, and, had a chance to talk to him, and he's like, you guys wanted those lights. I said, we didn't have anything to do with those lights being on those bridges. That was
you.
something that you did to make it look like our downtown. So make them work.
Anything
thanks,
else?
Michelle. I see those lights flickering or off each
Well, that
night.
one flickers, it flickers occasionally and then it's off.
Right,
For a
right.
couple days, then it flickers occasionally, and that's off for days.
Runs out of wax, it's a can.
It's like,
Do we just need Eric to go in and screw some new bulbs in there or
No,
something?
that one I think has an electrical issue.
Yeah.
Anything else, Michelle?
No, that's all I got.
Peeker?
I'm good.
Joel?
A couple of things, speaking of the bridges up there, we had a hearing and blah, 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 and Lincoln Select Board came or got on Zoom about the access to Lincoln Road and seeing over the bridge railing. And we were all told by the experts, oh, you can't raise that road on the Lincoln Road to pitch into 116 because the water running in it. Well, what did they just do out in East Street and Sawyer Road? Here on 17. Those both roads pitch towards 17. That's the thought I had. Why can't we just raise that road? If they don't want to seem to take the railing down one rail to improve that. And then Valerie, have the railings been gone? Speaking of railings, have the railings been pulled on Eagle Park yet?
No. Where we are with that, I had a Zoom meeting with Doc Doctors, the fellow there, and Roy, and he had some interesting insights to share, and some concerns about the original thinking of removing the rails and pulling them off and then installing them at the other end of the pathway towards the parking lot. That instead to remove them, but store them right at the platform itself, right there, because he's concerned that by removing the rails completely, and with the platform with no rails, that they could open up some liability, either for the town or the company or both, if somebody got injured, and that instead
So
by.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I interrupt, go ahead.
So by storing them at the landward side of the platform, as it's creating a physical barrier to getting on the platform, and they're heavy too. They're over 200 pounds each, and so it's not a simple thing to just unbolt them and hoist them away. That it would be better. So he's going to present a proposal to me and Roy. I'm not sure when we're going to get it, but he's got some ideas about how to do that. And the posts have been installed at the other end of the path. And we can still use those posts to put a chain link across it and say a facility closed kind of thing, to further deter people from going to the path, to the platform.
But so he recommends taking the rails up from around the square, the platform, and putting them on the bank side
Yeah,
and standing them up or laying them down or what?
I'm not sure. He's going to give us a proposal.
April's coming here pretty soon and, the logs come down through there again and we get it washed out and
Right.
there's gonna be a few on the board. I don't think gonna be very happy.
Well, he
We all-
said they can be
the ones
unbolted
that-
right now. They're unboltable. But the thinking had been to redesign them so that they fit into a sleeve, but they would still need to be bolted into the sleeve. So he said, no matter what you do, you're still gonna have to unbolt them.
So they're there now. They're up now.
Yeah.
But those are the ones that were originally there. They
Right.
haven't changed
They haven't
them.
done
Oh,
anything to
those
them.
are-
okay.
Yeah, those are the original ones. They haven't been replaced.
Okay, all right. And Peter, you'll know more. because the highway liaison, is Eric thought about renting a chipper this spring to chip all these?
He hasn't,
He hasn't,
he hasn't said anything yet.
but a lot of trees down in the village and stuff, I just was wondering if he was gonna chip them.
Oh, I do wanna say one more thing. We were talking about that tree on Church Street last week, the next day I went by, sergeants were there taking it down.
Yeah, they were there the other night.
It's like, I texted Eric, I said, oh, I said, they must have heard us talking, and he said, oh, they're there now, and I said, oh, you didn't know? He said, nope, but I'm glad.
Yeah, that's all I had.
I don't have anything other than to say thank you to the fire department and our police department and their town crew with all the work they did in these storms. It was remarkable I saw them out all hours going past my place in the village, so I know they were out. I can't, you guys got called at, what, 10 different times during that storm? Is that what I read?
10 times the first storm.
The first one.
And
10 or 11.
2 the second one, 2 or 3.
Two or
the
three,
second
and then they had a
one.
crew out cutting trees.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I truly appreciate it. That,
And I really
Yes.
honestly think the wind was stronger Saturday morning than it was Thursday.
It was here.
Sustained.
It was here, up to my house it wasn't.
Yeah, Peter said it didn't blow at all.
Because when I came down for the call, it was like, holy smokes.
I mean, it was gusting up at our house, but it was like short, really high bursts, and then it would calm down, and then short, really high bursts, and then calm
yeah,
down.
my little house was shaking. It was a little
House
scary.
Our house made some noises we never
Like
heard
the
of
wizard,
make.
the house began to twitch.
So, under other business, we said we would talk about storm repair for the cemeteries.
Yeah, I don't know what to offer about that. I did, well, I observed some of the trees that fell the first time around, and I'm aware that more tree limbs fell the second time around at the Greenwood Cemetery.
Not tree limbs, trees.
Trees, trees and tree limbs, right.
I think that committee will probably meet and talk about that and probably bring it
To the
to
board.
us perhaps.
Right.
I saw Mike, talked to Mike Brown. this
Is
morning
that-
about
I was thinking about that. Is that an insurance thing? I mean, it damaged, up to Barney, it damaged stones.
Yeah,
And I
It
don't know.
depends on if we have an exclusion for natural disasters.
Oh, okay.
And I did see on Front Porch Forum a picture of the Greenwood Cemetery, and someone commented, where do I get involved? Because my company is a tree company, I have family buried there. And I did see that on Front Porch Forum.
Oh, I
Somebody,
And
not Front Porch Forum, excuse me, Facebook. I did
Oh.
see that
What
on
is that?
Facebook. Somebody said, I have family buried there, and I have a tree company, I'd like to get involved.
Well, that's nice.
Well, somebody should message him and say, contact Val.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's worth looking into about the
or the
insurance.
cemetery association.
So far, the only thing I've been able to advise folks to do is to report it to 211, and the folks at 211 might have some resources to direct people to. The Greenwood Cemetery would not be covered under the town's insurance in any way. And from our experience with VLCT insurance, they generally don't insure any park type structures, any land related stuff. They insure structures and contents of structures, but not stuff on the ground
It's a structure.
or under the ground.
A crypt is a structure.
Right,
So.
okay.
Contents
We're not
would be
asking
hard-
them to bring the people under the ground back, just fix their stones.
Yeah.
I think the contents covered.
That would be a
could
stretch.
pretty narrow.
Yeah, okay.
And
Okay.
the firehouse, that's all, Brett's working on all that.
Yeah,
right?
insurance.
Yeah.
He's got a quote. I don't know that the quotes have required select board approval in the past.
Not if it's
No.
an insurance
That's
claim.
insurance claim.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
And you said that you lost Slate here,
Yeah,
so that would be an insurance claim, right?
Mhm.
if you can get some sleep.
We'll have to get somebody to come, whether it's Rooster or somebody to come and look at it. Yeah, I would ask Rooster,
Rooster.
Rooster, that's right.
Construction, yeah.
because they did it before. If he's got time to come and look at it.
Chris says there's a pile out here, I didn't.
Yeah, I heard him say that Saturday night.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, I expect the next meeting, next Monday, will be very robust with budget information.
Yeah, next
Okay.
Monday is also the unified regs. Have
Right,
you, did they meet this
No,
past
they're-
Tuesday?
they're
Tomorrow.
meeting this week.
This
tomorrow
week,
night.
okay.
Okay.
it'll be interesting.
There
Yes.
was-
And I just, speaking of that, I would, maybe, Ian, are you going to that meeting tomorrow night? I have a bus run, I can't.
Maybe. I gotta look at my-
I'd like to get a clarification that Peter and I have been asking about the business yard okay, I asked Chris about it. I said, so is a business yard in a 5-acre zone, the biggest garage they could build is a 2,000 square feet?
No,
No.
5,000.
Or
5,000, because I asked Chris that question, it's the primary structure.
It's the
If they
primary
call it a
structure.
primary structure, then
You can build bigger.
you can
Yes.
build bigger.
But up there, the one on the Notch Road, is if the house and the business yard are on a 5-acre zone, the house is the primary structure,
Correct.
then what can he build? Only 2,000?
5,000.
Well, it's not the primary structure, the garage won't be.
It's the
house-
primary, it's the see, it's a
Chris said-
loophole, it's a loophole, there's,
Yeah, that's what he said to me, the house is
in
a
that
primary
district,
for
I
a
believe
resident.
for an accessory structure in that district, I believe it's 5,000. In other areas, well, I think the business yard for both the commercial area and RA 5 is 5,000.
5,000, yeah.
Cause I was thinking, if you got two buildings on a 5-acre lot, and you got, one of them is the house is the primary,
Yeah,
and then everything, if you
no,
have
the
it
other one is the primary,
for business.
yes.
I
That's
thought
where
that
the
was,
business takes place.
yeah,
I thought that was kind
I
of,
mean, it's a loophole, but it's
it's there.
there.
Yeah.
I'd like to see if that meant what they mean by that,
Yeah,
that definition.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're gonna talk about that, but we can see.
Okay,
Okay.
Yeah, because that wasn't one of the changes.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
They can't, I mean, they can't add something.
No, it wasn't.
No, they
that
can't.
was part of it.
Technically add
Yeah.
something, they can kind of correct something or fix something
Is
that
that
we
what
might
they
have
meant?
done wrong,
Yeah.
like we put it.
Somebody builds a
footprint,
house on
make
their
that
5
one.
acres.
We did have a brief executive session, but I actually don't see it on this agenda, Val. Can we do anything about that?
We can add one if you feel it's necessary.
I do think it's necessary.
You want to make that motion? Are we done?
Yes, I think so.
I make a motion, we enter into executive session to discuss
Personnel.
matters per 1 VSA section 313.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Didn't think so.
Bye,
Okay.
Jill.
Bye,
Thank you,
Jill.
everyone.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks,
Good night,
Jill.
Jimmy.
Good night,
Good to
guys.
see you,
Take care.
Jimmy.
Yeah, take
Glad you
care.
feeling better.
Thank you.